Ontario
now
politics.
We begin a simulcast of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's live coverage of parliamentary elections in Canada. Voters took to the polls earlier today to elect a new government. This live broadcast of the election results will last 3 hours.
Be decided by the voters in Saskatchewan. The polls are just about to close there. We're going to take a very short break, a 10-second break, as we prepare to welcome viewers in Saskatchewan. So don't touch that dial. Don't go away. Our election night coverage continues live from Ottawa. The Liberal majority hangs in the balance. Reform tries for a swap with the Bloc.
Federal election night. Live from Parliament Hill. Here is Peter Mansbridge.
And greetings to our viewers joining us now in Saskatchewan, and welcome to our election headquarters tonight, Parliament. We're inside the historic Hall of Honour. Saskatchewan is the final chapter in this story tonight. Results from the other provinces are already in. Jean Chrétien rolled the dice tonight in parts of Canada. He's paying the price. The Liberals are back in power all right, but other parties have taken a big bite out of their majority. The standings as we see them up to this minute: of the 249 ridings we've heard from, of the 301 in the country tonight, 146 are in the Liberal column, 145 now either elected or leading, and you will be interested in knowing 100 of those are in Ontario. The Bloc Québécois trying to hold on to opposition status tonight, unlikely to make it. They're at 40 right now. Reform expecting big gains in British Columbia and in Saskatchewan tonight. Expect to pass the Bloc in the next few minutes for second place. The Tories, interesting story tonight. They did really well in Atlantic Canada. They're back as an official party. They're at 19 at the moment, elected or leading in 19. The NDP at 11 and 4 for a total of 15. Big gains for them in Atlantic Canada as well. John Nunziata leading in the Toronto riding of York Southwestern. He's the other, the independent Liberal now. Canada overall, here's the change of vote. Of the votes counted so far, remember, still to be a lot of votes counted, especially in Western Canada, but so far, the Liberals are down about 5 percentage points from last time in 1993 at 38%, the Tories at 25%, the NDP at 16%, Reform at 15%. But that number expected to go up as the votes are counted in British Columbia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. So that's the big picture story unfolding Saskatchewan. As you join our coverage, you'll always see this display at the bottom of the screen. The Liberals now inching towards 151. Will it be BC and Saskatchewan that decide whether or not the Liberals will form a second majority government in a row? This story is a cliffhanger right now. Jason Moskowitz, the CBC's chief political correspondent, joins us. These next few minutes will determine whether Reform's number 2 and, of course, whether the Liberals form a majority or not.
And Peter, when Jean Chrétien called the election 5 weeks ago yesterday, he had no idea that at this time of night, on election night, he'd be waiting to see if his government would have a majority. Yes, there were miscalculations that the Liberals made. They began in Atlantic Canada. You can't easily explain losing your health minister in Nova Scotia, David Dingwall, your minister of defense, Doug Young, in New Brunswick. The good news for the Liberals tonight is that support for them remains rock solid in the province of Ontario. The added bonus for the Liberals is that they're winning more seats in French Quebec than they've won in a long time, largely because the Conservatives did better in Quebec than expected. There was some vote splitting in Quebec, allowing the Liberals to win some ridings in French Quebec that they haven't come close to in 17 years since 1980.
All right, well, now we have the Liberals at that magic figure of 151 in terms of leading or elected. But we are still not prepared to say with certainty yet that the Liberals will form their second majority government in a row. It's looking good for them at the moment, but still those ridings in Western Canada just starting to come in Saskatchewan and British Columbia, and they're early returns at this moment. So we'll see how the story unfolds, and of course that story for second place as well. Reform. Are they going to make up the seats in BC and Alberta and Saskatchewan that they expect to and cruise into second place? Start picking out the colors for the drapes at Stornoway. It hasn't been used in 3.5 years. You know, the Bloc wouldn't use it, the official opposition residents. Nancy Wilson is covering Reform tonight, and she's watching that story unfold.
Well, Peter, we had told you, and again, not surprisingly, that Reform's robust performance in Alberta is still sustaining. And in fact, a few moments ago, we were saying that Reform was flirting with sweeping the entire province of Alberta. Things are still changing in some areas. Let's look at the overall situation in Edmonton. Reform, that you can see, it is certainly picking up its share of the vote marginally. It is taking on the Liberals in a couple of ridings there, but that is seesawing back and forth. Want to show you, of course, one riding where there is no contest, and that is Deborah Gray's riding of Edmonton North. She was a former deputy leader in the former parliament and obviously uncontested this go around. And we also want to show you the riding where the one Liberal is making a fight of it. Again, just a few moments ago, Reform was ahead of Anne McClellan, the Cabinet Minister's Mines and Resources Minister in the last parliament, but she is pulling ahead, so she is making a fight of it in Edmonton West. So even though, Peter, we're saying that in Alberta, by and large, Reform has a lock on this, and this is good news as it starts to do the math, still Liberals making a fight of it in one sole riding in Edmonton.
All right, Nancy Wilson, thank you very much. The Liberal number at 152 at this hour, and if you're wondering why we're not officially saying that because they've passed 151 that it will be a Liberal majority, some of those ridings, 4 of them at least in Quebec, it is a very small lead they hold over the Bloc Québécois at the moment, less than 100 votes, and until we see some clear signal that the Liberals are going to hold on to those seats or take them from the Bloc Québécois, we are hesitant to make that decision yet. But nevertheless, things looking good for the Liberals in terms of a squeaker in terms of majority, as they are now leading or elected in 153 seats. They only need 151 to form a majority government. Gilles Duceppe has been declared re-elected in his riding now. That's all the leaders except the Prime Minister, Jean Chrétien, in the riding of Shawinigan, which is still very close. The last time we had a look at that, Jean Chrétien was leading by about 400 votes. He's starting to open it up over Yves Duhem from the Bloc Québécois, but it's still not final yet, but the leading looking a little more comfortable now for Jean Chrétien than before. The other 4 party leaders all re-elected tonight. Well, you saw Deborah Gray has been re-elected in Alberta tonight, and Kelly Crow is at her riding headquarters, and she joins us from Edmonton. Kelly?
Thank you, Peter. Deborah, good news for you tonight. You just found out that you've been elected. How are you feeling?
Yeah, well, that's pretty exciting. That's a hat trick for me. That's 3 elections in a row I've won, and I'm just so grateful because I made the move here to Edmonton North, and the people have said, yes, Deb, we'll give you another shot. I'm just thrilled.
Now, it's sort of a good news, bad news night for your party because you're doing well in Alberta, which is what you would have expected, but no great gains in Ontario and the rest of Canada. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think we did very well in Atlantic Canada. We came second ahead of some of the Liberal incumbents, and that's not half bad, that's for sure. And in Ontario, we'll just see what the final count is. But I think, again, you know, there's maybe not a huge breakthrough, but anything more than 1, I'd say, is an increase. And we're going to mop up here in Western Canada, and we're just thrilled about that.
Thank you very much, Deborah Gray. Back to you, Peter.
All right, Kelly Crow in Edmonton with Deborah Gray, and Reform starting to declare those seats elected in different parts of Alberta tonight as they inch ever closer to the Bloc Québécois, who are at the 40 number now. The Liberals, to do that story, that's why we were hesitant on this making a declaration of majority government yet, because the numbers are bouncing around a little bit. They're down to 152 now. It's those Quebec ridings, there's 3 or 4 of them where the vote is very, very close, and until it's clear which party's going to win it, we don't want to make those determinations yet, as you see number bumping up again. And for some reason tonight, the vote coming in quite slowly from British Columbia. We're not quite sure why on that, but we will keep watching the BC ridings to see what happens, because they are obviously crucial as well to a Liberal majority situation. The first result in from Saskatchewan, it's showing the Reform Party in the lead in one riding in Saskatchewan, Battleford's Lloydminster, but once again, that's very early going in the vote count in that area. And in Reform headquarters in Calgary Southwest, there's Mr. and Mrs. Preston Manning watching the results coming in, and Preston Manning obviously feeling comfortable at this hour that the 35 number he's looking at now is going to keep inching up and will very soon pass the Bloc Québécois number. Jason wants those BC numbers come in.
Yes, and he'll be very pleased to be the leader of the opposition, but he will be very displeased with what happened in the province of Ontario tonight. It's incredible. The Liberals leading or being elected in 101 of 103 seats last time we looked. Even the Liberals thought that, boy, if they did 90 seats in Ontario, they'd be doing very well. What they didn't know when they were making those calculations, had they been down to 90, they would be looking at a minority government, and they could just be very, very grateful to the province of Ontario for delivering that majority tonight, should it turn out that way. They are teetering on the line, and it's all because of the province of Ontario.
All right, well, let's check in the province of Quebec, because when Preston Manning unseats the Bloc Québécois in the official opposition status, which he's yet to do so far on the evening on the numbers we're looking at the display at the bottom of your screen, but we're comfortable in our projection that Reform will end up number 2 on the evening based on what's still to come in from BC and Saskatchewan. The Bloc Québécois, 41 seats so far, and they are being watched tonight by Wendy Mesley. Wendy?
Peter, they're watching these numbers. I'm sure that they have given up any dreams about forming the official opposition again. They came into this race with 2 requirements. They wanted to win more seats than the Federalists at 40, 41, 42 seats. They seem to be safe on that front. The other thing that's interesting, look at the top line there, 39%. That is, they are down 10% from or 10 points from the last election. They told me about a week ago that their absolute core was 38%. The absolute minimum that they would bring out tonight would be that, and they're just over that tonight, so they will be quite disappointed in these results. A couple of interesting races. They are still holding on to the absolute minimum of seats that they want, but it's extremely different than it was in the last race. A look now at 2 of the most prominent women in the Bloc Québécois. Here is the riding of Suzanne Tremblay. She came to fame in the rest of the country for calling John Charest. She is re-elected, but what a huge difference from 1993, where she was ahead by more than 10,000 votes. She's down 16% tonight. In another riding in East End, Montreal, this is Francine Lalonde, once a PQ MNA, now a Bloc MP. She too has been re-elected. She won by more than 20,000 votes in 1993. She has been re-elected tonight, but obviously, the electors, the voters in her riding, are sending a bit of a message tonight. We're still with you, but don't take us for granted. Peter?
All right, Wendy Mesley reporting on the Bloc Québécois tonight. Reform continues to inch closer to the Bloc's 40 number. They are at 38 now, Reform, with the results starting to flow in now from British Columbia and Saskatchewan, where Reform is expected to do well. The Liberals at 152, and you're watching it bounce around. 9 leads so far for the Liberals across the country, under 100 votes, and because of that, we are not projecting yet a Liberal majority government. It's obviously right on the edge. A lot may be determined by how the Liberals do in the Vancouver area ridings. Not many Vancouver ridings reporting so far. It's mostly ridings from outside of Vancouver that we're hearing from already. And in Saskatchewan, where the Liberals hold seats, as you well know, will they repeat this time around? There's been a lot of concern in Saskatchewan about how well the Liberals might be doing. We'll see that soon. Only 1 riding reporting so far in Saskatchewan, and that has the Reform Party ahead. Well, there's your numbers up to the moment. The Liberals at 152, the Bloc at 40, and Reform now at 40. So they've drawn even with the Bloc Québécois, and as you all know, and as Wendy's mentioned, there's a ceiling for the Bloc. They can only go so far. Reform still has lots of ridings that they're at play in, and they're yet to hear from on those. So Reform comfortably heading towards 2nd place. At Bloc Party headquarters in Montreal, Mark Kelly is standing by. And Mark, what's the mood in there tonight?
Well, so far, Peter, it's a pretty good mood. That's because they've just announced that Gilles Duceppe has been re-elected. This is his riding. We are at the headquarters here, so obviously there's some excitement. One person I'm with here is Bloc MP. Well, we have to wait to see that. Réal Ménard. He's watching the results very closely because it hasn't announced whether you've won yet. Mr. Ménard, what we're seeing tonight is a big drop in support for the Bloc Québécois from 1993. What has happened to your support?
I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you. We cannot say at this time it's a big drop. I realize we have 41 seats. It means the message of the Bloc was very clear, and we realize with 41 seats we have an action, and we will continue to promote and to defend the Quebec interest. I don't believe we can argue it's a big drop for the Bloc Québécois.
Now, it doesn't look like you will be able to hold on to your status as official opposition. What does that do to the Bloc? How will that hurt the Bloc?
If we lose official position, it means we will not the first in the House of Commons to raise a question. We will not have the chairman of the committee, and we will not have the same level of money regarding the research. I think this is not nothing, but we can following to promote Quebec interests if we are not the opposition official. I prefer to stay and to keep this status. But if we are not the official opposition, we will work tireless.
Now, I think one number that a lot of Canadians will be following tonight is that your overall support, your percentage of the vote, and it looks like it's down by about 12% so far. What does this say about support for sovereignty?
I think this is not a referendum. When people vote, they vote about a lot of factors. And this is not a good test to estimate and to evaluate the level of popularity, what the sovereignty are at this time. I am very optimistic, and I'm sure we will be a lot of members of the House of Commons, and we will prepare the next referendum.
An optimistic Réal Menard at a very happy Bloc headquarters. Peter, back to you.
All right, Mark Kelly in Montreal reporting to us tonight. Well, that race for second, look at that, a dead heat with the Bloc and Reform. In the Quebec riding of Saint-Maurice, this is going to be a while yet before the final decision is made in this riding. Jean Chrétien, the Prime Minister, of course, the government is coming back, still up in the air about majority-minority, although it's starting to look comfortable for the Liberals. But many of those seats still under a 50-vote lead for the Liberals. This is one, though, is very close, Jason. The Prime Minister with a 400-vote lead over Yves Duhem. This is not the kind of result that he wants to have a squeaker in his home riding.
No, but he'd like to win it. He wouldn't care if it's a squeaker as long as he wins it. Clearly, he can't afford to lose it. You know, in the last few elections in Saint-Maurice, there have been reports that Jean Chrétien would lose in his riding. And I, in the past, have often bought into the argument that he could possibly lose it. However, every time that is said beforehand, he always wins it. So this time I went with the view that he wins it every time. He'll win it again. I'm sure it's a little too close for his comfort. We'll wait and see a little longer.
All right. Well, another opportunity now for our stations along the line, both the affiliates and the CBC stations across the country, to afford their viewers an up-to-date analysis of what's happening in their particular ridings. We're trying to cover as many ridings as we can from here, but obviously if you're concerned about your own particular riding, this is the best way to get it. So we're going to make our little move on our screen, on your television screen, so all the local stations can put their results in at their own convenience over the next little while. So when the screen moves back, as it's about to now, the local stations and affiliates along the line will go ahead and fill in results as you see them. The Liberals are leading and are elected at 154 at the moment. 151 is the magic number for majority. The Bloc still ahead of Reform here in the fight for second place, but the Reform numbers still in BC and Saskatchewan, they're starting to come in. Reform doing extremely well in British Columbia, leading or elected in 15 ridings already. The Liberals on the board with leads in 3 ridings in British Columbia. Now, Don Newman is watching the Liberal story and their march to their second straight majority unfold. Here's Don now. Don?
Peter, the Liberals knew they were going to do well in Ontario, but they had 2 concerns. One was the GTA Metro Belt, the Greater Toronto Area. Those ridings were meant to be a real battleground. And the other was the concern over the appointed candidates, the candidates the Prime Minister named, so they did not have to go through the nominating process. Well, it turns out, by and large, nothing to worry about. Let me show you what's going on in the Greater Toronto Metro Belt. There you see 16 ridings in that area. 15 elected, leading in 1. So the Liberals really not much of a battleground in the GTA Metro Belt. Let's look at some of the ridings of the appointed candidates. Sarkis Asadurian, he was an MP in the last Parliament. His riding got redistributed out of existence, and he had to move to Brampton Centre, so the Prime Minister appointed him there, but he has come very easily through there, and he has been elected. Judy Longfield in Whitby Ajax, she was appointed, one of the women that the Prime Minister said he had to name, make sure he got more women running. Well, Judy Longfield elected as well in Whitby Ajax. Looking there at Kitchener Centre, that is Karen Redmond. She too, an easy time of it. She was running against John Reimer, the former Conservative MP who lost in 1993. Reimer tried to come back, didn't work. Karen Redmond coming to the House of Commons instead. And other ones, of course, as well that were nominated were Eleanor Kaplan, pardon me, in Thornhill. She is the former Peterson government cabinet minister in Ontario. She was named in Thornhill. Some people thought she might have a tough time in the GTA Metro Belt. Not the case there. She did very easily as well. Judy Sgro was appointed by the Prime Minister to run against John Nunziata. She is the only other person appointed in Ontario, and as you know, John Nunziata holding on there, although all the votes aren't counted yet, but it looks as though in York South-Weston at least, the appointed candidate is going to lose. Peter?
All right, Don Newman on the Liberals, and one of those ridings he updated us on was Eleanor Kaplan's riding in downtown Toronto. She has won tonight, and she is with the CBC's Brenda Craig. Brenda.
Peter, I'm here with Eleanor Kaplan in the riding of Thornhill, where it has just been announced, of course, that she has won this riding for the Liberals. No stranger to provincial politics in Ontario, sitting member of the provincial legislature, former member of cabinet in the Liberal government of David Peterson, and now on her way to Ottawa. Eleanor, what's your reaction to what's happened across the country to the east of here?
Well, there have been some surprises in the Maritimes. We weren't expecting that, but I've been focusing on Thornhill, knocking on every door that I could possibly get to. And I am thrilled and overwhelmed at the welcome and the generosity that I have felt from the people in this riding. And if you look around this room, you'll see the face of this riding here, the diversity, and everyone has just been wonderful.
You're also one of the four candidates, female candidates that Jean Chrétien appointed. You bypassed the nomination process. That wasn't popular even within your own riding. You've been criticized even by other women parliamentarians. What do you say about that?
I'm proud that Prime Minister Chrétien took action to ensure that competent, qualified, prominent women were on his slate of candidates. He listened to the Liberal Party when they told him in 1992 that they wanted him to have the ability to intervene when he felt it was appropriate. And I believe the people of Thornhill have responded by saying to him, you did the right thing, and thank you. And I say thank you to the people of Thornhill.
Minister in the former Liberal government of David Peterson. That job apparently is open. David Dingwall has been defeated in Nova Scotia tonight. Are you at all interested in taking on those issues when you get to Ottawa?
You know, my passion is Medicare. As a former Minister of Health, one of the reasons that I've told the people of Thornhill that I want to go is to protect Medicare and see it enhanced. But I can tell you I will serve in whatever capacity the leader of the government, the Prime Minister, feels that I can make a positive difference.
All right, thank you, Eleanor. Eleanor Kaplan, Liberal member for Thornhill. Peter?
All right, Brenda, thanks very much. A noisy crowd around Eleanor Kaplan tonight. Here's the scene up in Ottawa, the nation's capital, where the lights are twinkling in the background, and in the foreground, the Parliament buildings. A shot from across the Ottawa River in Hull, Quebec, and inside the Hall of Honor, the spectacular sight here inside the Parliament buildings. This is the corridor that splits the House of Commons down the middle, or the Parliament buildings down the middle. The House of Commons on your left-hand side behind those walls, the Senate on the other side. Peter Mansbridge with Jason Moskowitz having a look at the results as they come in, and for the first time in the last little while, the Reform Party passes the Bloc Québécois as they march towards second place overall in the evening and the official opposition leader's office. For the Liberals, they are frozen at that 154 number. Very close here in Saint-Maurice this evening. This one's still not over as the lead has now shrunk for Jean Chrétien. The Liberal leader and the Prime Minister, of course. He's been in a close race here with the former PQ Cabinet Minister Yves Duhem, who finished second in the leadership race for the Bloc Québécois. He went in there with the support of Jacques Parizeau, among others, up there many times, speaking on his behalf in Saint-Maurice. This is a tight race, and we're not declaring that one over yet, as we are not declaring majority versus minority for the Liberals. As you see that number, it's been bouncing around, down now to 153. It'll all be determined on how well the Liberals do in Saskatchewan and in British Columbia. And for the Reform Party, those are the areas that they are hoping will deliver them seats tonight, and in such order that will put them in the opposition leader's position. Well, Nancy Wilson is watching Reform, currently in second place. Nancy.
Well, Peter, based on the numbers coming in from British Columbia, it looks like Reform is poised to become the next official opposition. It is very much on the move in British Columbia, and even in some of the ridings where there were expected to be some tough fights. This is the riding of North Vancouver. Ted White is leading against his main opponent, Liberal Warren Kinsella. Warren Kinsella, probably more familiar as a strategist to most people than as a candidate, but Liberals had targeted this riding. This has been an extremely aggressive and very personal fight, but as you can see, Ted White at this stage very much in control of that situation. No relation. This is Randy White in the riding of Langley Abbotsford. Interesting because this is one of the ridings where certainly Randy White has been talking about a Get Tough on Crime platform, which is very much a part of Reform's platform, clearly resonating tonight in Langley Abbotsford. Nanaimo Cowichan. This is interesting. Reed Ellie is in the lead for Reform. This was Bob Ringma's old riding. So again, Reform showing very much a strong presence in British Columbia, and I think so close to official opposition status it can taste it. But one footnote to this, so far Reform must be looking at this, particularly Preston Manning, and thinking this is a sweet and sour result. Strong showing in the West, but in Ontario, last time we checked, nowhere is Reform leading in Ontario. That could change, but at this stage, what it had gained earlier in the evening, it's now lost, so some seesaw fights there, no real strong surge.
All right, Nancy Wilson watching the Reform Party tonight. Well, thanks to our stations along the line, the CBC stations and affiliates who have been giving and providing you with the results in your particular area. That time is now up, but we'll be coming back to them later on in the evening to give them the opportunity to once again update you on the ridings that are obviously closest to your heart, the ones that you either live in or live next door to. So that opportunity now, you'll see us coming back to, as we say, full screen strength. And for the Liberals tonight, the story remains at 156 Liberals leading or elected, and you've seen that number bouncing around. They only need 151 for officially to have a majority government, but as you see, the number is moving around. We're not making that declaration yet. We want to actually see the numbers before we make that declaration. In York South-Weston, look at this one. This is one the Liberals wish they hadn't lost. Of the 100 or so ridings they won in Ontario tonight, this one's a tough one to swallow. John Nunziata wins. The former Liberal left the party over his arguments with Jean Chrétien and others over the GST, and he wins convincingly in York South-Weston over the appointed Liberal candidate, Judy Scrow, and that one's going to be a burr in the side of Jean Chrétien, no matter what the overall numbers end up being this evening. And for the NDP gains, as we've seen in different parts of the country tonight, and here's one in Selkirk Inner Lake, and you will see these continually shown throughout the evening. So still, the Liberal story is one that is still unfolding by the minute as they try to make up for sure a majority government. Will they get it? Well, Don Newman's watching it closely. Don?
Peter, if there is going to be a Liberal majority, one of the reasons will be because the party is doing better in the province of Quebec than they had they had hoped they would do this well, but a lot better, or at least significantly better than they did in 1993. Let's look at ridings that are coming their way this time around. Anjou, Rivière-des-Prairies, that is Yvon Charbonneau. He is a well-known Labour leader. He is leading Roger Pomerleau, who held the riding for the Bloc Québécois. And look there, Jean Corbet. He is the former transport minister in the Mulroney government and the Kim Campbell government. So three big names running in that riding, but at the moment, the Liberals with a lead of about 240 votes in Anjou, Rivière-des-Prairies. In the riding of Beauce, this man is named Claude Drouin, and he has been elected. In the last parliament, that riding was held by Gilles Bernier. Gilles Bernier was elected as a Conservative in 1984. He was kicked out of the party. He ran as an independent in 93, held the riding. He didn't run this time, but he supported the Liberals' Claude Drouin, and Monsieur Drouin replaces Monsieur Bernier in the House of Commons. And in Hochelaga-Maisonneuve, you saw Riel Menard being interviewed by Mark Kelly a few moments ago. Well, it's not clear that he is going to make it back. Denise Malo has a lead of almost 240 votes now, only 5 of 203 polls. But for the moment, at least, Riel Menard having difficulty as well. So if the Liberals are going to get over and stay over that 151 number, it will be an improvement in Quebec to help make up for the disaster in Atlantic Canada earlier that helps them up over that ledge.
All right, Don, thanks very much. Latest update on the riding of Saint-Maurice, the Liberals. Jean Chrétien's riding, he's only up there by 227 votes in Saint-Maurice. It's close, with 30% of the vote reported so far in the riding of Saint-Maurice. That one is going to be a cliffhanger, as so many things seem to be this evening. As the Liberals hovering around the majority mark, we're not putting them there yet because many of these races are so close. Let's take a quick look through the West. In Manitoba tonight, of the 14 ridings, the Liberals are elected in 6. It's all over here in Manitoba. The NDP in 5, the Reform in 2, and the Conservatives in 1. So all the parties on the board in Manitoba tonight. In Saskatchewan, half the ridings we've heard from so far. Look at this. This is why we're being hesitant on these Liberal numbers. The Liberals getting shut out in Saskatchewan. They lost 6 seats in Manitoba so far. This is early going. The NDP leading in 4, Reform leading and elected in 3. The Liberals are not on the board yet, and that includes the powerful cabinet minister from Saskatchewan, Ralph Goodale, who's trailing in his riding. In Alberta, the Liberals are leading in 2 seats. Reform's elected in 24. Those seats both close at the moment. We're not declaring those ones over yet, and that's why we're being cautious on this call between minority and majority. The Liberals look comfortable now at 156. It's a question of whether those seats will firm up and harden for them, the ones they're leading in. In British Columbia, 32 of the 34 ridings reporting from so far. Here, interestingly, the Liberals are doing well tonight, leading in 6 seats, the Reform Party in a total of 22, and the NDP on the map here with 4. And it'll be interesting here because there were concerns by some Liberals that they were in trouble in British Columbia tonight, Jason. And here we have them now leading in 7 of the ridings in BC. And it'll be interesting that if they get their majority, they may well be basing it on their successes in BC tonight.
And they'll be very pleased that they held their seats in British Columbia because obviously they needed to this evening. You know, the Liberals, let's look at Ontario again. You know, the last time we looked, it was the Liberals leading in 100 of the 103 ridings, leading or elected. And you know, there's so many of these ridings where the Liberals have about 40% of the vote, in some cases less than 40% of the vote. Here again, an instance of vote splitting, the Reform Party and the Conservative Party splitting the vote, allowing the Liberals to win. And in some ridings in Ontario, because the NDP did so well, there are vote splits going other ways. In Ontario as well as in British Columbia. For example, David Anderson, the Minister of Transport, he's leading so far in his riding in Victoria with only 35% of the vote. The Reform Party has 25%, the NDP 21%. So there are all different kinds of splits this evening, and the Liberals seem to be benefiting from most of them.
All right, the stories at this hour. The Liberals ahead with 155 seats. We're waiting to make sure they hold on to a number of those. The races are very close before saying they will form a majority. This is one of the seats that is still in the question mark area. The Prime Minister now opening up the lead a little bit to 323 votes now over Yves Duhem. He must be breathing a little easier. It was down to 200 a couple of moments ago. But still, this is a close one. You know, there are still a lot of polls to report in Saint-Maurice. Prime Minister has held that seat for most of the last 34 years. He was out of Parliament for a couple of years by his own decision, but hoping for another re-election in Saint-Maurice tonight. Now, let's get a look at the overall numbers for the Tories tonight. They are back in the books as an official party after doing so well in Atlantic Canada and making some marks in Quebec as well. Neil MacDonald is watching the Tories tonight, and here's his assessment. Neil?
Well, Peter, after that big start in Atlantic Canada, the Tories have taken gas pretty much everywhere in the rest of Canada with a few exceptions. Let's take a look at a couple of them. In Compton-Stanstead, the Eastern Townships, the old mayor of Lennoxville, the former mayor of Lennoxville, David Price, is ahead. In Manitoba, moving into Brandon, oh, wait a second, we're in Markham here. That's Gobinder Singh Randhawa, a Liberal. He's ahead of Jim Jones, the PC, in Markham. And in Parry Sound, Muskoka, there we go, Louis Mackenzie, Canada's most famous general. Back to the lecture circuit for Louis Mackenzie. All right. Look, coming out of those provinces, the Tories can now lay a rather tenuous claim, the most tenuous of claims, to being a national party. A seat in Manitoba, a couple of seats in Ontario, 3 seats in Quebec, and a great big Atlantic caucus. Jean Charest, the leader of a maritime party, has to be wondering whether he wants to stick around at a party that's dead last for the next 4 years.
All right, well, Neil, we're going to pick up on that point with Jason. The Tories at 18 at the moment, as they've slipped out of the lead in one of the ridings they were leading in a moment ago. You know, on the one hand, they did 9 times better than they did the last time. On the other hand, they've only got 18 seats, and once again this time, they're behind the NDP in seat totals, at least at this hour, and you got to wonder what it means in terms of the future of the Conservative Party of Canada.
And most of the seats, as we said, are in Atlantic Canada. And the question is, what is respectability for the Conservative Party? Here is this proud national party around since Confederation, finishing, it looks like tonight, behind the New Democratic Party. What will it take for Jean Charest to stay? I think about 6-8 months ago, the consensus among many Conservatives was that respectability was 35 seats. On a bad day, you could bring that down to 32. On a really bad day, you could bring it down to 29. But when you're below 20 and you're below the NDP, where do you go from there? And those are the kinds of questions that Jean Charest and the Conservatives will have to ask themselves after this evening.
Well, the questions that are being asked of the Reform Party tonight are, you are now in second place, what are you going to do about it? One of the questions we think has been answered. Preston Manning, when he was asked a couple of days ago whether he'd move into Stornoway, the official opposition residence, he said no, I believe.
He said sell it.
He said sell it. Okay. Well, actually, that could be worth a few bucks, although the Ottawa real estate market isn't doing so hot these days. But that's one of the questions being asked, and many of his MPs, though, are celebrating tonight as they finally make it to number 2. They tried every trick in the book in the last 3.5 years to become the opposition, as their fight with the Bloc Québécois resulted in a dead heat in seats by the end of the last Parliament. Terry Milewski standing by in North Vancouver tonight, where he's at the riding headquarters of Ted White, one of the successful Reform Party candidates tonight. Terry, what can you tell us from BC tonight?
Well, Peter, obviously they're very happy reformers all over BC. Probably the best possible result they could have hoped for tonight was to see Preston Manning as leader of the opposition and to take over opposition status from the Bloc. A lot of voters in BC obviously angry. It rankled. It got down in their throats about the Bloc being the official opposition in Ottawa, and tonight they're determined to change that. It looks like they're on the way. With me, as you say, is Ted White, one of the successful reformers. This was one of the ridings where the Liberals had high hopes. They sent in Warren Kinsella, former speechwriter for the Prime Minister, a very high-profile candidate. It didn't seem to have worked. In fact, at the moment, Mr. White seems to be cruising to an easy victory. How do you account for that?
Well, we knew we had won from day one, Terry. The day we opened the doors and the volunteers started rolling in, the donations started rolling in, we knew we had it from day one.
Now, if Reform does form the official opposition, how will Canadians notice a difference? What will that mean in practice?
Well, the thing it means in practice is that we've proven that we are a national alternative, and that's our intention to become the government of Canada.
And as for Stornoway, Mr. Manning said, I believe the other day, that he would turn it into a bingo parlor and use the proceeds to pay down the national debt. Was he serious? Was he serious?
That sounds like a good election night joke there, Terry.
Now, how far are you going to go in BC? You think you can hold all of your seats in BC based on the current showings?
It's looking pretty good at the moment, but there's a number of seats in the Vancouver area that could go any direction. I think we're all watching them with interest. What strikes me as interesting tonight is I can't remember the number of times that Liberals said to me in the House, you won't be back, I mean, you're a one-term wonder, and here we are back in strength, national alternative, ready to form the government of Canada.
Now, they had a case, though, did they not? A year ago, they were 50% in the polls in this province, and you guys were in free fall. What changed? What happened?
Well, Reform has always gone in waves. That's why our logo looks like a wave. We've always recognized we rise and rise and rise, and we're still on that pathway.
Now, beyond this, how does Reform become a national party? How do you gain strength in the East?
Well, now that we're official opposition, it's certain we're official opposition, that gives us much more time on the media stage. Obviously now people have to take notice of us. We've got a good chance of really making our presence felt.
Thank you. That's Ted White in North Vancouver, winning tonight amongst very happy Campbell. Peter, back to you.
All right, Terry, I think they were cheering for you. A great interview with Ted White, the Reform MP from North Vancouver. Well, here's the Peace Tower clock. It's just past 11 o'clock here in the nation's capital, and here are the numbers up to this hour. The Liberals leading are elected in 155 seats. Some of those are still pretty close, including the Prime Minister's own seat in St. Maurice. So at the moment, we still haven't formally declared a majority government for the Liberals, but it's starting to look good for them, has been for the last little while, as their leads are holding up even in those tight races. Reform in second place with 55, leading are elected. The Bloc Québécois at 44, the NDP at 23, the Tories at 19, and John Nunziata at 1. You want to look at one particular riding? Well, head to our website if you're an internet user, cbc.simpatico.ca, and this will give you the riding results in any riding in the country, so feel free to use it. All right, we now have seen enough. We are convinced that the numbers that we've looked at across the country, and even in those slim leads, will hold up for the Liberals. Jean Chrétien, he can turn that half smile into a full smile now. He becomes only the second Liberal leader in the past half century to form two back-to-back majority governments. Remember, Pierre Trudeau never even did that. It was Louis Saint-Laurent, the last Liberal leader, who had two back-to-back majority governments in a row. So Jean Chrétien does it tonight. The gamble pays off. It was tight right down to the wire, and still he's in a close race in his own riding.
Yes, and he will be looking at his own riding. He's ahead by a couple of hundred votes last time we looked, but it never should have been that close in St. Maurice. And the Liberals will tell themselves that they never should have lost their health minister in Nova Scotia, David Dingwall, their defense minister, Doug Young, in New Brunswick. And the Liberals will say that a lot of things happened tonight that shouldn't have happened. What the Liberals will say is that they're very grateful that Ontario did for the Liberal Party what it did tonight, pretty similar to what it did in 1993. Tonight, so far, the Liberals are leading and elected in 99 of Ontario's 103 ridings, and that, for the Liberal Party, is the story of the election. The majority may very well have come from the province of Quebec, where the Liberals did better in some French ridings than they ever expected to, for the simple reason that the Liberals haven't done well in French Quebec in 17 years. But with the Conservatives getting more votes than expected in Quebec, there were some vote splits, and it enabled the Liberals to win some ridings that they otherwise couldn't have won.
All right. Well, you know, about an hour or so ago, I interrupted Hannah Gardner, who was working with her panel down at the far end of the Hall of Honor, just in front of the Parliamentary Library. And Hannah, I promise this time I won't interrupt, as you can now fully discuss the ramifications of the fact that the Liberals now have their second majority government in a row. Hannah Gardner.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you for the apology, and I bet if there's a reason, you'll jump in and it's okay. I'm curious, looking at these numbers, you would think that Preston Manning would be very happy, Stephen Harper. He's the leader of the opposition, but on the other hand, he hasn't really done what he intended to do. He wanted to be a national party. We went in being divided region against region, and it seems that's what we have now.
Well, there'll be some disappointments in terms of not making the big breakthrough, but I think Preston Manning will be pretty happy being second rather than third, fourth, or fifth. And I think it's important to point out that not only will Preston Manning be leader of the opposition, but in a historical context, he's made a tremendous achievement. He's established Reform as a permanent force. This is the best two-election performance by any third party in Canadian history. This is a tremendous achievement. He may not be a national party in the true sense, but there is none other than the governing party, which is elected by an Ontario bloc. The PCs tonight have lost their claim to be a national party. They now consist of some left-of-centre MPs from Atlantic Canada and a few soft separatists from Quebec. So they really don't challenge Reform in its base anymore. So, you can certainly see the disappointments, but Reform can claim some significant victories here. And as I say, in a historic context, this is an amazing breakthrough.
Well, I mean, the only victory they can claim really is official opposition status because of what's happening with the bloc, and even that's shifting a bit. I mean, I think the NDP is a story tonight here. As of now, running ahead of the Conservatives on the issues of jobs and health care. Atlantic Canada, 2 major cabinet ministers knocked off some seats in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and probably British Columbia and the Yukon. Ontario, obviously, is where the Liberals have got the stronghold, but in the rest of the country, I mean, this is going to be a different parliament. This is going to be a parliament much more reflective of the population of Canada, and there'll be much more debates going on, my guess is, on the issues that people are concerned about, not that the media and the elites are concerned about in this country. There'll be a lot more debates about jobs and health care, and I think Alexa McDonough and her team have done well as well. And I just say, I mean, the Reform, I mean, there's nothing for the Reform in Ontario. There's nothing in Atlantic Canada. I mean,
I'm curious, too, how this configuration of the Parliament is going to affect an approach to Quebec.
I agree with that. This Parliament is going to be very different. First, you have this breakthrough in Acadia of the NDP, something unheard of before, very interesting. Then we will have 5 official parties in this Parliament, so the question periods will be fascinating. As for the Bloc in Quebec, I think it's a moral victory for them. They remain the first party of Quebec after a disastrous campaign, and the inroads that the Liberals have been doing in Quebec, they are due to Jean Charest.
Absolutely.
It's because a lot of the people who voted for the Bloc the last time were former Conservatives, and it shows that Quebecers are fundamentally federalists. The minute that they see a ray of hope, and Charest represented that with this message of reconciliation.
So you think those were people...
Would you not agree, however, that the Bloc benefited from Preston Manning's attack and from the Prime Minister's
It certainly did. But if you look at the Liberal, they have about 36% of the vote right now, and it's not a big inroad in French Quebec, given the fact that English-speaking Quebec is massively voting for the Liberals. It means that you have about 15 or 20% of the French-speaking people in Quebec voting for the Liberals.
Can I just say,
People have not forgotten 1982.
I think you won't be surprised to hear that I'm delighted with the results tonight. I mean, we really have. This is an incredible success story primarily for Jean Charest and his leadership. I mean, he has rebuilt the party from the ground up, from 2 seats to basically 20 seats. He's increased his popular vote all throughout the country. I think you're seeing, to Stephen's point, I mean, the reality is we have a base in the Maritimes, we have seats in Quebec, we have seats in Ontario, and we have seats in Western Canada. And the Reform Party, despite the fact that they're the official opposition now, largely due to the failure of the Bloc Québécois, has not made any progress at all. Once again, they're a regional party that stops right at that Manitoba border, and they haven't made any inroads at all. And I think if I might just say one thing to Bob's point, I'm actually frankly delighted that both the NDP and the Conservatives are back, because what I think it suggests is that there actually are national alternatives that are still alive and well and in Parliament, and that Canadians have reached out to in this election.
I don't think a number of the Conservatives got elected in Atlantic Canada believe in the platform of Jean Charest of tax cuts and the right-wing agenda. I think this will be a much better debate. Nobody predicted the NDP at 24 seats. People said national unity was the issue in this election. It wasn't. It was jobs and the economy, and it's reflected there in the seats tonight. Like just on the Tories, I mean, they had 2 million votes last time and 2 seats. I just know what the large number of...
What about the Liberals? How did Jean Chrétien come out of this election, even though we're looking at a majority?
Well, they can't be happy. It's the slenderest of majorities, and they better make sure no one leaves town. I have some experience in these matters, and I'd be counting those 155 on a daily basis.
Well, Doug Young can ride his camel now, so he won't be going to town.
There's something good for everybody.
Mr. Chrétien has won a majority government for the first time in 44 years, that a Liberal government has won majority back-to-back. The country has been through some tough times. We've had to do some tough things, but we've got support in every region of the country. We're a national party. I'm also very pleased at the support of other national parties across the country, the NDP and the PCs. I think that's very encouraging. And
how long will it be before there's going to be talk about who's going to replace him as party leader?
Oh, as soon as Mr. Chrétien decides his future.
Pardon me?
Tomorrow.
That depends more on Monsieur Duhem at this point than anybody, probably.
You say tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow the talk will start.
So.
The Liberal Party, what's really interesting about this election historically is for the first time in the past 2 elections, we see an Ontario bloc vote. We had a Quebec bloc vote for decades. We've had a Western bloc vote. Now we have an Ontario bloc vote electing the government. What's really clear from this election is Mr. Chrétien would never carry a 3rd term. He'll be very lucky to carry his own riding. He's finished as a political force. He will not be Prime Minister in the next election, and he will not be Prime Minister in the next Quebec referendum.
I'd have to agree with Stephen on that. I think if anything, what these numbers speak to is, despite the fact that it's a majority, it is a very, very slim one, and it's a real failure on the part of the government to put forward any kind of positive vision or plan for the future, and I think that's what Canadians...
I'm sorry, I thank you very much. I can't stop them, Peter. Go ahead.
Okay, Anna, that was wonderful, and good to hear from our panel with some time. We will be hearing them again later in the evening. So what are we still expecting to see tonight? Well, obviously, all the leaders will make their formal speeches to the nation based on the results that you see continue to unfold in front of you. This is one, obviously, that the Prime Minister wants to have done with before he makes that speech. He's increased his lead over Yves Duhem in Saint-Maurice, but still less than half of the polls reporting so far. This is a close one, but the lead now up around 500 votes, which must make the Prime Minister feel a little more comfortable tonight. Quickly, across the country, in Newfoundland tonight, the Liberals elected 4, the Tories 3. Remember last time it was 7-0 for the Liberals. Next door in Nova Scotia, of the 11 ridings, the Liberals wiped out here. They won all 11 last time. Tonight, the NDP are in the column with 6, the Tories with 5. Still one race left to be declared in Nova Scotia, and that's the riding of Sackville. In New Brunswick, the Tories win New Brunswick tonight. 5 seats, the Liberals 3, the NDP 2. Last time around, 9 of those 10 were in the Liberal column. And moving on from New Brunswick to Prince Edward Island, all 4 seats stay in the Liberal column. Next door to Atlantic Canada, first up, we are going to Quebec to see how things have unfolded so far this evening. Of the 75 ridings, they're almost all done. The Prime Minister is one of the ones that is yet to be formally declared, but the Bloc Québécois, once again, the leading party in Quebec, 44 seats at the moment. The Liberals at 27. That is a gain, though, for the Liberals, and the Tories on the board with 4, 3 aside from Jean Charest, their leader. In Ontario, look at this, incredible. 103 ridings, 99 of them In the Liberal column tonight, Reform stays with just one, the NDP picks up one, and the Tories have picked up one. And the other, once again, is John Nunziata in York South-Weston, declared elected tonight. In Manitoba, the Liberals had 12 of 14 last time. They hold on to 6, Reform at 3 at the moment. The NDP does win 3 seats in Manitoba. That's tripling what they had there last time. The Tories elected in 1, leading in 1 for a total of 2. So a 4-party race in Manitoba. In Alberta, 26 ridings to look at, and Reform is in the elected column for 24 of those. The Liberals are elected in 1, leading in 1, so they're down a couple from where they were last time. But Reform well in the lead, and in British Columbia, the 34 ridings, 23 in the Reform column at the moment, 7 for the Liberals. This is an increase for the Liberals and a bit of a bonus for them tonight, helping make that second majority government in a row. The NDP on the map with 4. There are 3 northern ridings as well. We want to update you on those as we go to Saskatchewan once again, the last place in the country to close down. Sorry, we missed Saskatchewan as we roll across the country here. Reform leading or elected in 8 ridings, the NDP in 4. The Liberals just leading in 1 at the moment. This would be damage for the Liberals in Saskatchewan. The Tories not in the game. And that's Ralph Goodale, the Minister of Agriculture, making a bit of a comeback. He had been trailing earlier. And in the north, the 3 ridings up for grabs there tonight. The Liberals holding on to 2, and the NDP in Yukon, that's Audrey McLaughlin's old seat, they are leading in Yukon. So if that's the way it ends up in the north, no change there. Overall, 156 for the Liberals, 60 for Reform. They win number 2. They are the official opposition. The Bloc at 44, the Tories and the NDP both gaining official party status. Well, we go from center court here in the Hall of Honor, looking now down the Hall of Honor at the far end. Behind Hannah Gardner and her panel, we look inside the Parliamentary Library with the history of our country in every book that's in there. It's a great place to be for Rex Murphy tonight, the host of Cross Country Checkup and works for the CBC, The National as well. And of course, Rex has been thinking and pondering. Pondering. He's got that pondering look on his face right now. Rex, what do you have for us?
Well, it truly is very interesting. The Liberals have a majority government, but I think it should be characterized as an uncomfortable majority. 150 plus a couple of seats really isn't enough for the terrific times that they're going to have to face. An interesting thing in this election as well is that now every single party, if you want to think about it, with a few adjustments, is a rump. And the Liberal Party is the biggest, or has the biggest rump of all. Without that solid bloc in Ontario, they wouldn't be there. And Ontario voted for the Liberals because of Paul Martin liberalism, which is the same reason why in Atlantic Canada the NDP and the PCs voted against them. In other words, fiscal liberalism in the Atlantic provinces doesn't play, but fiscal liberalism is the message of Mike Harris, believe it or not. It's Paul Martin's kind of message. Reform has done very well indeed. Reform has got the opposition. It is the only party, regardless of what you think of their policies, it's the only party this night that has made a significant jump. They got the second slot. They do have the movement. They lost big in Ontario. They had a big hope, but they're the ones that have the chance to go. For Mr. Charest, the most popular leader in the entire campaign and the historic party, to have only 20 seats while he was so popular, that's a devastating verdict. It can't be whitewashed. The PC party has a terrific dilemma. The NDP are obviously at the highest stage that they've ever been. They do have a significant number of seats. They do have a constituency. But look at it from the Liberals' perspective, national unity coming up, another referendum, a much stronger chance of dominating polarization in the House of Commons from Reform. It's an uncomfortable majority for the Liberals, and it may not be one that they can dispense effective government for the next little while. So, Peter, it's a very, very interesting night. Lovely stuff to look at.
All right, Rex Murphy with his thoughts. This is what it was all about tonight. Seats in the House of Commons. You're looking live inside the chamber right now. It's pretty quiet in here, as it usually is at this time during a parliamentary agenda, especially in the evening. There is nobody in the House right now except little old me. I'm at the front entrance of the House of Commons, and the 301 seats in here tonight are all going to be filled, many of them by new members of Parliament. As you can see with the distribution of the seats across the board there, the Liberals at 154. Reform at 61, the Bloc at 45, the Tories at 20, the NDP at 19, and there will be one independent. Well, earlier in the evening, we showed you a graphic animation of what it looks like in the House of Commons. We want to update that graphic animation now to give you a sense of what it's going to look like when all the different MPs take their seats. This is done by the Department of Works. The Digital Simulation Lab has made this for us, and we really do appreciate it. When you start adding in the colors, the Liberals now filling up one whole side as the government, and as we said, they will form a majority, but you remember the last time around there were so many Liberals they spilled over onto the other side of the House of Commons. Unlikely to do that this time, though, because they've lost a lot of seats tonight. In fact, they still, though, are the majority government in position. But look at all the different colors, and it was interesting hearing our panel talk earlier. It's going to be a completely different parliament now, with 4 parties getting official party status in here, aside from the Liberals, obviously, as government. It's going to be a totally different kind of question period. You remember over the last 3.5 years, because neither the NDP or the Tories had official party status, it meant they did not get onto the parliamentary agenda each day after question period or during question period. They did not have an automatic right to ask questions. They will this time. It's going to be a real challenge for the Speaker, the past Speaker, Guy Perron, who won re-election tonight, and it'll be interesting to see if he wins re-election as Speaker. He's been very good to us in the past year as we've negotiated access to the House of Commons and the Parliament buildings over this past year, and he's been very good to us, allowing us in here for tonight's election night broadcast. We can update the story now on Jean Chrétien. He has been declared elected by the CBC's decisions desk. Based on the results we've seen, it's been a close race all evening, but now with roughly half the polls in, he's starting to open up that lead, and it's based on looking at where the different returns are coming on, riding by riding, poll by poll inside that riding, and now Jean Chrétien comfortably re-elected in Saint-Maurice. But the Liberal total, 154, it is just a bare majority. You heard Nancy Jameson mentioning on the panel a few minutes ago, nobody should be leaving town when crucial votes come up. She knows that well, of course, having worked for Joe Clark when he lost power in 1979 on a questionable vote count in terms of internal Tory politics. A number of Tory members were away. Well, that's the look inside the House of Commons. Let's march our way back out of here. And when we first start looking out here, we see in the foyer of the House of Commons, that's our colleague Bernard Derome and the Radio-Canada crew giving the results to our French viewers on the CBC system. Look, this is, we're walking down here, this elevator just outside the lobby of the House of Commons. This is the one where you see cabinet ministers escaping through. They go out this door when they're trying to get away from reporters, challenging them after question period. This is Prime Minister's corridor. This is where the paintings hang of all the different Prime Ministers. We pointed out earlier in the evening, Louis Saint-Laurent here, the last Liberal Prime Minister to win back-to-back majorities. Well, when Jean Chrétien's picture goes up here in the wall, in the corridors of Parliament, he'll also be able to say he's won at least 2 back-to-back majority governments. John Diefenbaker there, as you see, next door to his old rival, Lester Pearson. So that's the look at, and probably our last look tonight, at Prime Minister's corridor. Now inside the fantastic ceiling, the rotunda area, as we enter the Hall of Honor in the Parliament buildings after that little quick walk down to the House of Commons. Well, Jason, that point about how question period's going to change and the whole nature of Parliament now, given the fact we've got 5 parties with official party status, the government, of course, and 4 opposition parties, it's going to be quite a question period each day.
I don't know how they're going to do it in 45 minutes.
I don't know. I mean, it may have to be a longer question period. You and I have never seen anything like that with that many parties. Usually the lead opposition party gets, 20, 25 minutes of time. Well, there's only 45 minutes in total. It will be interesting.
And the other question, of course, is the regional representation of this parliament. After the 93 election, many people felt that the regional representation was too much and that there just weren't enough national parties anymore. And Jean Chrétien campaigned in this campaign claiming that the Liberal Party, that was the national party. And yes, he did win seats in all parts of the country, but in Western Canada, the Liberals did not do very well. And when they called this election, part of the reason for going early was that Liberal polls indicated that they could do tremendously well in the West. And it is very sad for the Liberals tonight that what they thought was going to happen did not happen, that the polls were there, but in fact, during the campaign, the Liberals lost a great deal of support in Western Canada. And traditionally, historically, the Liberals had so much problem problems in that part of the country, and it's if people in the West remembered why they had so much difficulty voting Liberal in the past, and they decided in this election to exercise that right to not vote Liberal again.
All right, Jason Moskowitz. Well, the reform story tonight is one of achieving second place and official opposition status, and that means that when the daily question period starts, no matter how they break it down in time, first up, every day, looking across the floor of the House of Commons, Preston Manning challenging the Prime Minister on the issues of the day. How has Reform done it tonight? Made it up to the 61 seats you see now reflected on our display at the bottom of the screen. Well, Nancy Wilson has been watching Reform all evening, and here she is now. Nancy.
Well, Peter, you ask, how has Reform done it? I guess it's responded to the call of Horace Greeley, go west or stay west. Certainly, as you laid out Reform's presence in the House of Commons, it is a distinctly Western voice. This is the lone fight in Ontario for Reform. Reform's Paul Shaw and Simcoe Gray in a fight for his life with the Liberal, and it's been seesawing back and forth. He appears to be pulling away somewhat at this point. It seems to be a long night in Simcoe Gray, and certainly as Preston Manning savors the fact that as official opposition leader, as you say, he enjoys the lead-off questions every day in daily question period. The other problem, of course, is virtually shut out in Ontario. In fact, there is a slight slippage in the popular vote in Ontario for Reform. It's been in a dead heat for the share of the popular vote with the Conservative Party, again revisiting the 1993 history of Tory Reform split in Ontario. So it is a partial victory, and certainly official opposition status will do for Reform Party, but it had hoped to do much better in Ontario.
All right, Nancy Wilson on Reform. Well, the Bloc Québécois at 46 seats loses official opposition status, but still the numbers are pretty encouraging to a campaign that was in so much deep trouble just a couple of weeks ago, and people predicting it could drop down to as low as 10 seats. The question remains, though, what does the Bloc's performance tonight mean in the overall sovereignty debate and the continuing story of the Quebec issue? Well, the Deputy Premier of Quebec is Bernard Landry. He's in Montreal tonight, and he's talking with the CBC's Mark Kelly. Mark?
Thank you, Peter. Yes, I'm joined by Bernard Landry. Last week, Mr. Landry, your boss, Lucien Bouchard, the Premier of Quebec, said it would be a couple from hell having a Chrétien government with a Reform Party opposition. Well, tonight it appears that's exactly what we've got. What do you think about that now?
I think it's basically true. Nevertheless, population cannot be wrong in democracy. They have chosen that official opposition. We would have done that because we think for a G7 country to have as an official opposition is so far to the right party. It's not good. It's not positive for the country as a whole. But if the population has decided to do that, it's because they have some reasons. And the Quebec factors was, of course, perturbating the campaign and creating unusual conditions. And the Reform played over that issue. And unfortunately or fortunately, as long as we will be in Canada, every electoral campaign will have as a core the Quebec question. And I think it's time to resolve that. And the Reform clarifies things in a sense because it's saying, you're a province like the other, you still like that, and that's it, you take it or leave it. For us, it improved our position in terms of dialogue with our own population. And to have at the same time a very hostile government in Ottawa to the Quebec National Project. The Liberals are the more hostile of the recent history. They break the contract with the unilateral repatriation. They sabotage meat. So the policy of the worst is the worst of the policy. But if the population is deciding that, we will live that rather well.
Okay, Mr. Landry, thank you very much for taking time out. Peter, back to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Here's the scene in the nation's capital tonight, a live shot from across the river in Hull, Quebec, looking back towards Ottawa on the Parliament buildings. The nation's capital about to be reassembling a new Parliament, the 37th Parliament. It'll be a few weeks yet before all the new MPs hit town, but it is a much different Parliament than the last one. The Liberals now down to 152, and that's why we were so cautious about declaring the majority. Live now to Halifax. Here's Alexa McDonough.
We worked like hell. We dared to dream, but we never made the mistake of taking it for granted. is back. We're going back to Parliament in force, and we're taking a very big caucus from Atlantic Canada. And in case nobody noticed, we are the only opposition party that can say we truly represent Canadians from coast to coast. I want again to thank the voters of Halifax for having placed their confidence in me, and I want to thank the people all across this country who have placed their confidence in the New Democratic Party. The success that we have achieved in this election has come to us for many reasons. And
the first reason for our success in this campaign is that our party deals with the true concerns of Canadians. The priority of jobs, of health, of education, poverty,
et l'équité fiscale.
And tax fairness.
We ran a campaign that we can be proud of. We made it clear to Canadians what the priorities would be that New Democrats would fight for in the next Parliament of Canada, and we are going to remain true to those priorities and true to those commitments. Friends, the victories that we have won tonight are your victories. And let me say that every NDP vote that has been cast in this country matters, because it is a vote that says we are a proud and hopeful Canada. NDP votes matters for another reason. Every one of those NDP votes matter because they are a message to the Liberals. And the message to the Liberals is do not take us for granted. That we will not stand for a government that does not stand up for us. Canadians tonight have delivered a stern rebuke to the Liberal government. Canadians have said 3.5 years of a government not paying attention to our need for jobs and a health care system that's there for Canadians when and where they need it, and an education system that's going to help our young people get on with their lives. And a government that will make sure that our children, all of our children, get the best possible start in life. Thank yous that I want to express that I know my fellow members of Parliament here on the stage. In addition to thanking each and every Canadian who cast a vote of confidence in us today, each and every campaign worker that got out there and worked their hearts out for what they believed in. I want as well to thank that incredible team that were with us in the air, crossing this country. And you know, our crew, our air flight and pilot crew, did a calculation yesterday. I think it's called an aeronautical computer or something like that, that we traveled in the last 5 weeks the equivalent of 1.5 times around the world. That's true. The team has been incredible. That's been with us across the country. The team that has worked behind the scenes out of Ottawa and out of every campaign in this country have been terrific. And I want to say that we know we've exploited the hell out of all of them. To the people of this country every single day in this campaign. And that commitment was that not a single week would pass in Parliament over the next 4 years that we won't hold the Liberals to account and that we won't fight for jobs for Canadians.
I say once again, not 1 week will pass in the next Parliament in which the NDP will not hold the Liberals accountable on the question of jobs.
It's a tremendous responsibility that we have undertaken, but it is also a great challenge. And let me say, we are up for that challenge. We intend to fight to put the spirit of compassion and community and cooperation back into the Parliament of Canada. That sense of commitment that we make to one another as neighbors and that we make to one another as a nation. You know, Tommy Douglas was right about a lot of things. Friends, Tommy Douglas was absolutely right when he said, "'Tis never too late, friends, to build a better world." Have done, because of the confidence that Canadians have placed in us today, we're going back to Parliament to get on with building that better world. And now, there's one very, very important thing left for us to do tonight. And that, friends, is to celebrate one great big victory.
Alexa McDonough and her victory speech in Halifax tonight and her message to NDP voters and all Canadians tonight as the NDP a very strong showing. Alexa McDonough wins her seat and the NDP ends up with 20 seats overall on the evening as it stands at the moment, tied for fourth place as you see with the Tories. Well, we go from Halifax to Montreal, where Gilles Duceppe now is being welcomed on the stage at Bloc Party headquarters, or at least their party headquarters tonight in downtown Montreal. For Gilles Duceppe, it's been just a terrible campaign. A couple of weeks ago, some people were saying they could drop anywhere down to 15 or 20 seats in Quebec. A bit of a comeback, thanks mainly to the entrance into the campaign of Lucien Bouchard and Jacques Parizeau to some extent. Gilles Duceppe now speaking to supporters in Montreal, the Bloc ending up losing official party status, but back in the game with over 40 seats. Many people, as we said, hadn't expected they'd do that well. Here's Gilles Duceppe.
All candidates in the hall, come and join me. There are plenty here this evening.
Umberto,
come on up.
Gilles Duceppe inviting some of the candidates, the successful candidates from the Bloc Québécois, and some of those who lost in Montreal tonight to the Liberals. Once again, he loses status as opposition leader, but of course the Bloc's still very much an official party, finishing number 3 on the evening. Here once again, Gilles Duceppe.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for being here this evening, for joining us here for this election evening. It's been an exciting evening. Just crossing this room, you can experience excitement. It's been exciting because the fight's been very tight throughout Quebec. And all of those struggles are not yet completed. For instance, there's the battle between Yves Duhem in Saint-Maurice. It's not concluded yet.
Et vous me permettrez, en premier lieu,
and perhaps if I may, first of all, I'd like to congratulate all of the candidates of the Bloc Québécois who have fought to give to Quebec a majority of Bloc MPs in the federal parliament.
Je salue tous ceux et celles qui ont été élus.
I'd like to pay tribute to all of those who have been elected in Quebec and throughout Canada. The new leader of the official opposition, we don't yet know who will be the Prime Minister.
Je peux assurer la population du Québec
and I can ensure the population of Quebec that the Bloc will continue to express the voice of Quebec in the House of Commons in the full respect of the democratic institutions while supporting all initiatives in the interests of Quebecers. I'd also like to thank all of the activists, the volunteers, the supporters throughout Quebec, who through all of their dedication, their effort and their efforts, to send to Ottawa a voice which will speak out strongly for Quebec, a proud voice for Quebec.
Notre voix, la voix
Our
du
voice,
Québec.
the voice of Quebec.
Merci parce que je sais que sans
Thank you, because I know that without all of your efforts, we wouldn't have been able to elect a majority of sovereignist MPs to represent Quebec in the House of Commons.
Je remercie, bien sûr,
of course, I'd also like to thank all the voters in my riding, Laurier-Saint-Marie, who for the third time this evening have given me their confidence. And perhaps I could also thank all members of my family who have supported me throughout this very difficult combat.
Je pense en particulier à mes enfants,
I'm thinking especially about my children, Alexis, Amélie,
qui ont milité au cours de cette campagne,
who have worked throughout this
et
campaign.
à ma conjointe,
And I'd like to thank my wife, Yolande, who has supported me and encouraged me right throughout this campaign.
Parce que faut pas se le cacher, cette campagne a pas été facile.
Of course, we all know that this campaign has not been easy. It was difficult at different points in time. At some points in time, it was quite comical. And I'm saying that now that time is passing by. Of course, I didn't think it was particularly comical at the time, but of course, it was just a baptism of fire, an initiation to very difficult electoral campaigns where things happen so very quickly, at such an enormous speed, where image is far more important than content or dominates content.
Et où, malheureusement, l'anecdote prédomine sur l'essentiel.
Stories dominate over fundamentals.
Mais ensemble, nous avons su terminer.
But together, we've been able to conclude this campaign with a dedication that has always characterized and which will always characterize the bloc. We've worked very hard with conviction because we all have the same objective, and that is to give ourselves a sovereign country.
Et à l'issue de cette campagne,
and at the conclusion of this campaign, sovereignty for Quebec seems to us to be just as necessary and just as fundamental.
Si on peut tirer un seul constat,
and if we can learn one thing from the results this evening, that is that Quebecers,
pour l'ensemble du peuple québécois,
for Quebecers as a whole, there's only one option to come out of the constitutional quagmire, and that is sovereignty for Quebec.
Pour ceux et celles qui croyaient toujours en un
and for those
possible
who
renouvellement
still believed in the possibility of a renewal in federalism, this campaign will have proved once again that reconciliation of the aspirations of Quebec and those of the rest of Canada are impossible. The main issue that has dominated this federal election, the hard line against Quebec, is the best proof of the impossibility of reforming Canada, a hard line which is personalized by the Liberal Party and Jean Chrétien, and that has been expressed by Preston Manning and the Reform Party as never before. Even Jean Charest got involved with the hard line by wanting to validate the question and by refusing to oppose himself to petition in Quebec. And for all of those people and those parties, Canada is to be taken as such. And the victory of the hard line this evening cannot provide us with pleasure or joy, but it does allow us to measure the vast gap that exists between the legitimate aspiration of Quebecers and the more and more categorical refusal of recognizing these aspirations in the rest of Canada. We can conclude now that the option is clear. You take Canada as it is, because none of these parties has the mandate to reform it, or we provide ourselves with our own country, Quebec. For all Quebecers who refuse the status quo of the Liberal Party, of the Jean Chrétien, there's only one credible option, and that is sovereignty for Quebec.
All right, Gilles Duceppe speaking in Montreal as we watch on the other side of our screen Jean Charest arriving at his party headquarters in Sherbrooke tonight. The Tories making the beginnings of a comeback tonight, but was it enough? We'll hear from Jean Charest in a few moments' time when he speaks to the crowd in Sherbrooke. The Tories on the board with 20 seats tonight. Remember, they only had 2. They've done 10 times better than last time. But is it enough for survival? So we'll keep listening to Gilles Duceppe and switch over to Jean Charest as we watch him enter the hall on the right-hand side of your screen.
Once again, in this election, Quebecers said that they believe strongly in a sovereign Quebec. How could you blame them? None of the Federalist parties were able to convince neither Quebecers nor the rest of Canada of a renewed possible federation. All they've been able to put forward were plans to stop Quebec from becoming democratically a new sovereign state. But none of those plans will impede Quebecers from choosing what kind of future they want, be it remaining in Canada or starting a new country. It is a decision to be taken by Quebecers themselves, not by the Supreme Court of Canada. And my friends, I'm convinced more than ever that the Quebec future.
All right, well, we've heard from Gilles Duceppe in Montreal tonight. We're going to switch over to Sherbrooke now as Jean Charest prepares to speak to the crowd that's gathered at his party headquarters in his hometown of Sherbrooke tonight. There's no doubt the Tories are back in the game tonight, but it's still an open question as to what kind of game they will be playing in Parliament. For the Tories, they are up 17 seats tonight in the elected column for a total of 19. They're still leading in one other that we haven't declared finished over for the evening. They have 20% of the vote collected so far across the country tonight, and that shows a 3 percentage point gain. Let's listen to Jean Charest.
This evening, my friends, I would have liked to be able to find the words to be able to thank you, but you spoke today, and in the region of Estrie and the Eastern Townships, 4 times out of 5, you supported me. My friends, people say that long journeys start with a first step. It began with 1993, a second one in 1997. But in 1997, our challenge was significant. It was to get back a political party which had undergone one of the worst defeats of the political history of Canada. It was to take back a political party that had founded the country and to build it up again from nothing or just about. It was to revisit our roots and to be able to offer to Canadian people a choice, a true choice. And from the election this evening, what we learn is that there's a political will that has not yet been expressed throughout Canada and has not yet been expressed in Quebec. It becomes clear from the results of the election this evening that there's work to be done and a mandate to be fulfilled. A mission that still has to be fulfilled, and that is to bring together Canadians and especially to allow, finally, allow Quebecers to find the road that they're looking for. And the results of this evening do not perhaps allow them to find that result, but the result of this evening does allow them to take a step forward, and the result this evening invites us to continue.
Friends, the last 3.5 years have been for the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada a long and sometimes difficult journey. It has been an opportunity for us to rebuild a great national political party from the ground up. And from our devastation and from our defeat, we were inspired in the last 3.5 years by our devotion to our country. Friends, we've made a great step forward tonight, a grand step forward, not only for ourselves, but for our country. Tonight, as I acknowledge the work of the thousands and thousands of men and women who in the last 3.5 years believed and joined with me and with other Canadians in this belief of country and this belief of party, I say to them tonight that we have made a great step forward and that we cannot stop. We must now go ahead in the years to come and allow this party to take its rightful place and allow Canada once again to go forward. And so the results allow us to look to the future with renewed optimism, with a sense of confidence, knowing that we are able to accomplish great things as a political party when we are able to reach out to Canadians, when we stay true to our values, when we stay true to what we believe in. As I look ahead to this Parliament, I see again a fractured Parliament. I see again Canadians in the House of Commons divided. I see a government that is yet to demonstrate any clear indication, any clear plan for the future. In this campaign, we talked about the values that are close to our heart, of tolerance, of respect, and the things we've built together, whether it's a healthcare system or getting more jobs out of our economy or jobs for young people. We think, no, ladies and gentlemen, we just don't think, we actually know that our country can do a lot better. And so in the next few months, in the next few years, we will do exactly that, continue to make this country better and to allow all of the voices of Canada to be heard. That is, in the end, the destiny of the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada, to allow all of the voices of Canada to be heard, whether they are from Ontario, from the West, from the Atlantic, or from the province of Quebec, to be united and to have the voices of tolerance heard.
My friends, this evening we can be very proud indeed of what we have achieved. You know as I do that at the end of the line it's always a question of leadership. In such a vast country, such a diversified country as ours, political parties have to offer that leadership. Men and women who work, the activists have to offer that leadership, and the members of my caucus will offer that.
Ladies and gentlemen, I say to you today, as a leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, that I will stay loyal to the values and the principles of leadership that we have served this country so well, that the members of my caucus will do the same, and that we will serve loyally. And
I'd also like to thank from the depth of my heart all of those people who have worked so hard in my riding of Sherbrooke-Fleurimont. I'd like to thank you. I love you, and I intend to serve you with loyalty and to serve this great pride that I feel whenever I see you.
Je veux remercier également la population d'Estrie.
I'd also like to thank the population of Estrie that has joined us, and we are together in this great adventure. I'd like to thank my team of Sherbrooke. It has been quite extraordinary, and it is the best team in Canada. I'd also like to congratulate Prime Minister Chrétien for his victory this evening and say to him that Jean Charest, as leader of the PC, will work with loyalty in the Canadian Parliament in order to put the higher interests of Canada beyond any partisan consideration. And I'd also like to say to him that we will be there, the PC, to watch his government closely and to make sure that it is a government that meets the expectations that we have expressed during this election campaign.
The thousands of men and women who have worked with me in the last 2 years, those who were on my team in this election campaign. There is no doubt in my mind that I had the best team, the best candidates, that we had a solid and continue to offer Canadians a solid plan. Together, I say to them tonight, we have made a great step forward. We have served our country. We've come a long, long way, and we may have been in the eyes and in the minds of many, close to oblivion. But tonight, we've come back because it is the will of Canadians that we be there to serve our country. And now that they've pushed us forward, it is our duty to continue this march and to bring it to the end that we know we are destined for. And that's to serve this country as a government once again. That's what we will accomplish, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I intend to do for this party. And I want you to follow me and be with me in the next few years as we continue to serve. Mes amis, je veux garder mes derniers remerciements pour des gens qui
I'd also like to keep these final thanks to those who have made enormous sacrifices, the members of my family, the 3 children, and unfortunately 2 of them are not here this evening because they're asleep already. One of them is here, my eldest child, and my wife is with me, and many sacrifices have been imposed on her beyond what could be expected of anybody else.
Je vous dis, chers amis, je vous promets une nouvelle étape.
I promise a new step, and it won't be as hard as the last one. It'll be more exciting than the last one, and the step that we have taken today will be multiplied many times over the next few years.
Jean Charest speaking in Sherbrooke tonight after his party ends up 5th place overall in the number of seats with 20 seats, but Jean Charest making it very clear the Tories are back. They're taking this very seriously, their new mission in Ottawa, and they will be watching the government closely. So that's our live coverage from Sherbrooke as we come back to Ottawa inside the Parliament buildings, where in just a few weeks' time, Jean Charest will be leading his new band of MPs into the Commons, along with all of other parties and their newly elected MPs. Still to come tonight, speeches from the Prime Minister, the majority government Prime Minister, Jean Chrétien, as he wins re-election in Saint-Maurice, and also for the Reform leader, the opposition leader in Canada now, Preston Manning. Those speeches still to come from both Shawinigan, Quebec for the Prime Minister and from Calgary Southwest for Preston Manning. Now, let me tell you an interesting story, because the Liberals, the Tories end up 5th overall on the night in terms of seats, but Jason Moskowitz, they end up 2nd overall on the night in total vote. Their vote has gone up tonight. They're almost at 20% of the total vote cast in the country. That's up. The Reform Party actually ends up number 2 on the evening, but their vote overall in the country is down.
And in the competition between the Conservative Party and the Reform Party, one would have to say, obviously, the Reform Party did much better when you look at the 60 seats and official opposition status. But does that mean the Conservative Party is finished? Well, Jean Charest clearly said tonight in his mind, it means that the Conservative Party can continue to rebuild towards government, and he feels quite confident about it. The Reform Party has problems, as you said. It got less popular vote than last time. In addition, it lost the one seat it had in the province of Ontario, and now people will say of the Reform Party that other than Western Canada, it has no support in other parts of Canada, whereas the Conservatives can argue that it has some support in different regions of the country. But again, for Jean Charest, it is still a struggle. He is behind the NDP. He is last among the recognized parties, and it won't be easy, but what he said tonight is he's willing to give it a try.
All right. Well, we go from Ottawa. We're about to go to Shawinigan, Quebec, where the Prime Minister is about to speak. There you see Jean and Hélène Chrétien arriving in the Liberal Party headquarters in Shawinigan tonight. This one was a gamble from the get-go for the Liberals to go for that second majority early in the term, 3.5 years. You see him talking to some of the reporters on his way in, and he's about now to head up to the front, to the podium, the main podium, and talk to all his supporters and the nation. But Jason, many questions being asked, I imagine, around different Liberal circles this evening about the wisdom of the early call. Overall, they get that second majority. There's no doubt about it, but they get hammered in Atlantic Canada. They lose seats on the prairies. They actually pick up seats in BC, which is interesting. But this government is going to be formed 2/3 of the seats coming from Ontario.
No, and the Liberals cannot be happy with this result. Clearly, the Liberals thought that they would do much better, or they wouldn't have called the early election. They didn't call the early election to just clear the majority. And let's face it, Jean Chrétien has to worry about people getting sick. He has to worry about people wanting to leave politics. And he has to worry about more John Nunziatas, people who just disagree with him on policy issues and begin to threaten to leave the party. And you know, when you're that close to the line, that's when people threaten more, because they know that their threats could have more effect. So life for Jean Chrétien will not be easy. And also, in terms of his personal leadership, the Liberal Party, the Liberal government are diminished by this result. There is no question. All you have to do is look at what they did in 1993, look at what they did tonight, and say this is not nearly as good. And questions will be asked about Jean Chrétien's leadership. It's interesting that during the campaign you could go to a lot of Liberal meetings, and Liberals were already talking about Paul Martin. And I want to put this in the following context, that there was a view in the Liberal Party that Jean Chrétien would not be there through a full mandate, that something would happen, that he would leave halfway through. And I think a lot of Liberals thought that, assuming that they would do much better in the election than this. So I think a lot of Liberals will raise the leadership issue, not tomorrow morning, not next week, and maybe not 3 months from now, but it will be on the minds of Liberals leading up to the next election campaign.
The question will be, will they raise it publicly? The Liberals don't usually knife their leaders in public. And here, you know, all that having been said, and I don't disagree with you on any of those points, but from the school of thought that a majority is a majority is a majority is in the history books now, as having put together his second straight majority government. Even Pierre Trudeau couldn't say he did that, getting a couple of majorities, but they were interspersed with minority government situations. Here's the situation. The Liberals losing 28 seats overall on the evening. Their share of the vote down 3 percentage points at 39%. Pretty well roughly around where many of those polls in the final days of the campaigns were showing where they would end up. But, you know, losing seats in Atlantic Canada on the prairies, gaining seats in BC and in Quebec, and that huge whack of seats in Ontario to put that majority together. But a lot of things coming up, as you say, on the agenda, not just thoughts of the next federal election, but the next referendum.
And we should remember that the second mandate for any government, whether it's a majority or not, is much more difficult than the first mandate. And Jean Chrétien has been around long enough to know how difficult this second mandate will be. And it's not to cast negative doubts on the Liberals' ability to govern in the second mandate. It's just a fact of political life that when you get there for the second time, it is that much more difficult.
All right, well, the Prime Minister taking a sip of water from the podium, getting ready to speak to his supporters in Shawinigan, but he knows, he's been around long enough to realize that the cameras pointed at him are representing all parts of this country, and the message that he has for his riding is also the message he has for his country. Here he is, Jean Chrétien.
Alors, mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, mes premiers mots seront pour remercier
My first words
les électeurs du
will
comté
be
de
to
Saint-Maurice
express my thanks to the voters of Saint-Maurice who have elected me for the 10th time this evening. I'd also like to congratulate all of the successful candidates and all the political parties. And I'd also like to congratulate all of those who have worked during this election campaign, because their participation is essential to the exercise of democracy. And that applies to everyone who has worked for all the political parties across the country.
I want to congratulate each of the other party leaders for their personal victories in their own constituency. Each has campaigned very hard, and each of Mr. Manning, Mr. Duceppe, Mr. Charest, and Madame McDonough now have important responsibilities in the House of Commons. The Canadian people expect all of us to carry out our responsibilities in accordance with the long-standing Canadian values of tolerance, openness, generosity, and inclusion. That I will do. I want to welcome Madame McDonough to the House of Commons for the first time. She campaigned about social values. She and her team deserve congratulations. Je veux féliciter tous ceux de mes candidats.
I would like to congratulate all of the candidates and cabinet members who have been elected this evening. And to those who are not, I'd like to indicate how much I appreciate the efforts that they exerted to communicate the liberal message. Serving one's country and one's constituents is certainly the most noble activity that there is in human activity. And to those of members of Parliament who were not elected this evening, I'd like to thank them for all of their help and to the way they have contributed to Canada over the past 4 years.
Four years ago, the Canadian people gave me the great honor, privilege, and responsibility to lead our great country. I accepted that mandate with humility. I promised to do my best and to lead a government of integrity. That is what we have tried to do over the last 4 years. Over the last 36 days, we spoke to Canadians about our record, our team, our program, and our values. We offered a balanced and moderate approach in accordance with our fundamental values. Ce soir, le peuple canadien
this evening, the Canadian people has renewed their confidence in our team and in our program. I accept this honor and this responsibility.
The people of Canada have given me a mandate for 4 years, and I will devote all my energies over the next mandate to meet the enormous challenge of preparing Canada for the 21st century. Pour la première fois,
for the first time in 44 years, the Liberal Party has obtained a mandate to form a majority government back-to-back.
I'm deeply grateful to my colleagues in the cabinet and in caucus whose work over the last 4 years has made it possible to win 2 back-to-back majority Liberal governments for the first time since 1953. I want to thank all of the many thousands of volunteers who helped the Liberal Party achieve tonight's victory. And of course, there is one person I want to thank more than anyone else, my wife, Aline. Pour moi, pour mes enfants,
for myself, for my children, for my grandchildren.
Elle a été, elle est et elle sera.
She has been, is, and will be
le roc de Gibraltar.
Always the Rock of Gibraltar.
ans de vie publique.
34 years of public life. For a wife, that's a very difficult long-term contract. And I don't believe anyone else could have done it better than Aline, and I'd like to thank her publicly for that this evening.
We ran a campaign in which we appeal to what unites us, to the best instincts of Canadians, and the people have responded. With the honor given us tonight by the people to form a government comes great responsibility. It is something my colleagues and I take very seriously. The people of Canada have spoken, and we have listened. And we will continue to listen. I am grateful that we have won seats in all parts of Canada. We will once again form a government with elected members in every part of our country, and we will have a national government. That is how we will approach our mandate, with a national spirit, a national outlook, and a national vision. I pledge to govern for the whole country, in the interest of all Canadians, not just those who voted for my party, and in the interest of all regions of Canada, not just those who voted Liberal. And where we did not win votes today, I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that we will work very hard to win their confidence over the coming mandate. Now, we have a lot of work to do, and we must prepare Canada for the 21st century.
During the election campaign, we said that we had to continue to put our fiscal house in order, and we will continue to do that. And during the election campaign, we talked about creating a climate for job creation, and we will do that. During the election campaign, we promised to work to improve the economy in all its dimensions, especially by investing in the industries of the future, and that we will do, I promise you.
Campaign about preserving our social programs and Medicare, and that we will do. We spoke in this campaign about modernizing and expanding social programs, and that we will do. Ladies and gentlemen, we spoke during this campaign about combating child poverty, one of the great social problems of our time, and that we will do. And above all, in this campaign, we talk about keeping our country strong and united, and that we will do.
This evening, I'd like to congratulate in particular Jean Charest. He has contributed to the fact that Federalists have won a significant majority of voices in Quebec. I'll be happy to see them in the House of Commons, and I'll never forget what he said on a rainy evening when he went to the airport of Verdun 2 years ago, and he said to me at that time that when it came to Canada, he and I would always walk along the same path. And this evening I'd like to say that I'll always be proud to walk with him for a united Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very great challenge before us. We've had to take very difficult decisions, and we have been able to put Canada back on the right track. We have asked Canadians to accept very significant sacrifices, and I'm very pleased this evening to be able to say to Canadians that the country owes them its thanks, because if we're in a good position now, and if international organizations all say that Canada will experience very significant growth in 1997 and 98, it's because Canadians understood the message and they had the necessary discipline to allow us to achieve our objectives.
But I believe very strongly that Canada has a fantastic future. I spent 34 years traveling this country, and I have the privilege to visit every riding of this nation many times, and I know that this country has a fantastic future. Now, we have to work united, because our task is to make this country ready for the 21st century. And you all know that, for me, preparing Canada for the future will be the task of every day, and I will give everything, all the energy that I can have to make sure that the 21st century will be a great century for the Canada again. Et mesdames et messieurs,
ladies and gentlemen, it's with humility and determination that I accept the task of leading this country, this country of freedom, this country of generosity, of tolerance, and this country that has a glorious future into the 21st century. Once again, my friends, and especially to those who voted and elected and worked in this riding, I would like to thank you for the confidence that you have shown in me in my political career. 10 times you have given me the mandate to represent you in Ottawa, and once again I accept to defend your interests, because I believe that the future of Quebec, the future of Francophones, the future of Saint-Maurice belongs in Canada, because Canada is the best country in the world, and I am convinced that it will be in the future. Long live Canada. Thank you.
Jean Chrétien bringing his supporters to their feet in Shawinigan tonight as the Prime Minister wraps up his remarks after being elected in his own riding and watching his party win a second straight majority, although it's a cliffhanger, as you can tell, just over the 151 needed for a majority. Well, on the right-hand side of your television, the new leader of Her Majesty's official opposition. Preston Manning entering his headquarters in Calgary tonight, where he now will speak to his supporters and speak to the nation through live television cameras set up in Calgary. Now, the story for Reform tonight, obviously, they build on their 50-odd seats last time. They're up to 60 tonight. Interestingly, though, overall on the night, their vote is down from 3.5 years ago, and they didn't make the big breakthrough they wanted to in Ontario. They're once again a party that is very dominant in Western Canada and not much on the radar screen in the rest of the country. Nevertheless, they are number 2 on the night in seats, Jason, and they will form the official opposition. We wait for Preston Manning to make his way through that crowd and head up to the front of the area where he'll be speaking to his supporters and to the nation. But Jason, your thoughts on what we witnessed from Jean Chrétien there just a few minutes ago?
Well, he put the best face on the majority government by saying again that it's the first time a Liberal Prime Minister has won 2 majorities in a row since Louis Saint-Laurent did it in 1953. Whatever disappointment there was in the mind of Prime Minister Chrétien tonight, he did his very best not to show it. One can understand that very easily. He talked about still leading a national government and a national political party, and he talked about the future and what he wants to do in the future. And again, whatever disappointment there may have been with the result, resulting from his decision to go early, only after 3.5 years of a mandate, he disguised it by talking about the majority and the fact that it was the first time since 1953 that Liberals formed back-to-back majorities.
All right, well, for Preston Manning, tonight obviously a happy night in the sense that they're now official opposition, but there's got to be some concerns on his part that they didn't make those breakthroughs in central Canada, and they never wanted to be considered just a Western party, but a legitimate national party. Tonight, their vote drops overall, seats up, no breakthrough in central Canada. What does that tell you?
Worse still, the fact that they had 1 seat in Ontario and that they lost it tonight. Clearly a disappointment for Preston Manning. He spent a lot of time in Ontario during the campaign, particularly the last 2 weeks. Organizers for the Reform Party in Ontario thought that they were knocking on the door in 10, 12 ridings, and they just felt that they had to work it to the very end and that something would come up for them. And the fact that absolutely nothing came up for the Reform Party in Ontario has to be a major disappointment. What the party was looking for was a foothold, 5, 7, 8 seats in Ontario from which to build. Preston Manning was pretty persuaded that he would be the next leader of the opposition. That's what he set out to do, but it's really only half a victory for him without any seats in the province of Ontario or anyone else, or anywhere else besides Western Canada.
And the other thing that he really wanted to achieve tonight was to knock out the Tories, knock them flat on their back. Well, if you listen to Jean Charest and Sherbrooke tonight, they are far from flat on their back. They're going to take those 20 seats and try to make it work for them. And the argument for him is built up by the fact that overall in total votes across the country, the Tories were in second place overall on the night, just behind the Liberals and ahead of the Reform Party. The Tories can also argue they have representation in 3 of the 4 Atlantic provinces. They're represented in Quebec and Ontario, albeit only by 1 riding, and also in Manitoba. So in terms of national distribution of seats, although considerably less, they do have national distribution. Certainly not in Saskatchewan, Alberta, or BC. They do have it in the rest of the country, and that'll be their argument on that score. But in terms of Manning knocking out the Tories, didn't happen tonight.
Well, what Manning did do, he took away the Conservatives' power base in Western Canada for the 2nd election in a row. And it's very difficult to be a national party without a power base, and the Conservatives have lost their power base in Western Canada.
All right. Interestingly enough, their power base now becomes Atlantic Canada. That's where the majority of their seats are. Here's Preston Manning in Calgary.
Ladies and gentlemen, and let Sandra have the first word here.
Oh, wasn't this... Folks, wasn't this one incredible 36 days? It's not just 36 days, it's 10 years later, and the official opposition.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for waiting so late tonight. I want to comment in a minute on the election results and their significance to Canada. But first of all, I do want to express some heartfelt thanks and congratulations to a number of people. First, to my wife, Sandra, and our family for their prayers and encouragement and support. Thank you. To the constituents of Calgary Southwest who put up with a member that goes all across the country and only comes home on the weekend. Thank you. Thank you. And to our Calgary Southwest campaign team headed by Harry Robinson, thank you from the bottom of my heart for the work that you did this time. Where's Harry? Where's Harry? Get him up here, eh? Get him up here. To the Reform Party's national campaign team, headed by Cliff Fryers and Rick Anderson and Harry Myers, for the magnificent job that they have done. All of you, all of you. To my personal assistant, Ian Todd, without whose help we wouldn't get through one day. Where's Ian? To all the Reform Party candidates, both those who have won and those who have not, your fellow citizens, thank you for running the race, on our behalf. We thank you, everyone. I also want to congratulate the Prime Minister on his re-election and each of the other party leaders for the job that they did during this campaign. We are opponents, and yet we congratulate them on their achievements tonight. Thank you. Now, by tomorrow, everyone else will comment on the results, so I'd like to get my licks in first, okay? The latest results, as far as we know, are 154 for the Liberals, which is a bare majority, 45 for the Bloc, 21 for the NDP, 20 for the PCs, 14 of them from Atlantic Canada, and one other, and 60 Reform MPs. The reduced support for the government is surely a warning that the government must heed. And the warning is that you cannot break your promises, and you can have nothing to say. You can't go through an election with nothing to say on big issues like jobs and unity without paying a price. I trust that the government got that message this evening. The partial renewal of the NDP. We congratulate the NDP on the seats that they won. From our standpoint, what this now creates is a vote-splitting opportunity on the left. And we're not discouraged by that possibility. The failure of the federal PCs to renew themselves as a national party is a sign that the old political landscape is changing and will be shaped by new forces and new ideas in the next round. The removal of the Bloc from the position of official opposition. It is a development to be welcomed by Federalists everywhere, including Federalists in Quebec. And fifthly, the emergence of Reform as the national alternative to the Liberals, Her Majesty's loyal alternative. We've come a long, long way. We've come a long, long way because we're the only third party, the only party outside of the traditional parties to ever have made it to being the official opposition to the Parliament of Canada in this century. Now, some will say this new Parliament is a house divided. I would say it this way, that with the election of this Parliament, I believe Canada has entered into a season of transition, a period in which old ideas and old forces are dying, but it is a period in which new ideas and new forces are being born. This is a season of transition. It is one to be welcomed rather than to be feared. Because of the weakness of the government and the varied representation of this Parliament, it will be a challenge to make this Parliament work. Reform is committed to making it work, and one of the keys is to implement that free voting system that Reform has long advocated and whose time is now ripe for implementation. To the Prime Minister and to the other leaders, I say it is the people of Canada that have sent to this Parliament the varied representations of all the major options for the future. Let us therefore resolve to make this Parliament the transition Parliament that will guide the way to the new Canada of the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Preston Manning in Calgary tonight, the new leader of the official opposition, Her Majesty's official opposition, and his remarks to supporters and the country based on what he's seen tonight in terms of the results as they unfolded across the country. A warning to the Liberals that their majority is a slim one. There he is with his mother, Muriel Manning. His warning to the Liberals that their majority is a slim one and Reform will be after the government on a daily basis in question period. You can be sure of that. They already were in the past, and they will be again tonight. And Preston Manning congratulating Rick Anderson there now, one of his chief strategists. A lot of Western reformers a little leery of Rick Anderson at the beginning, very much a Eastern establishment political strategist, but he's been in the Reform wing for the last 6 or 7 years and has been a dominant force in the strategy development of that party. Well, back here in the nation's capital, the lights of Ottawa twinkling there in the background, the Peace Tower well lit up, and the Parliament buildings as well on the banks of the Ottawa River. And inside, in the Hall of Honor, where we have been camped out all evening watching these results come in, because obviously the Parliament buildings is a lonely place these days with all the politicians out on the hustings, especially in the evening. During the daytime, it's a wonderful place for tourists to visit, and if you haven't done it already, I hope we've given you a glimpse tonight of what it's like here. You should come. It's an incredible building. Well, Jason Moskowitz, let's quickly, first of all, before comments from you, I'd like to run through the ridings that have still yet to be finally declared tonight. As you see, the Liberals on the board at 155, leading or elected, Reform at 60, the Bloc at 44, the NDP at 21, the Tories at 20, and John Nunziata in York South-Weston. Here are the ridings that we haven't made a full declaration yet. You saw that one from Quebec, now in Simcoe Grey in Ontario. The Liberals with the lead of about 460 votes or so. This one looks comfortable with 5 polls still to go. In Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, John Diefenbaker's old riding, well, we never did get to see what was happening there, but in Churchill River in Manitoba, the NDP in the lead by about 400 votes over the Reform Party. That's in Saskatchewan, I'm sorry, not in Manitoba. And moving on from Churchill River, let's go back to Prince Albert, John Diefenbaker's old riding, Mackenzie King's old riding. And the Reform candidate in the lead here by about 600 votes over the NDP. The Liberals well back, and the Tories not even in the leaderboard here tonight in Prince Albert. In Saskatoon, Humboldt, another Saskatchewan riding, obviously, where the Reform is once again in the lead by about 124 votes, as you can tell. That one has still not been declared yet, and that might be the morning before we find out for sure who's won in Saskatoon, Humboldt. And in Yukon, Audrey McLaughlin's old seat, the NDP are leading here by a good chunk of votes, over 500, but still with 16 polls to be reported from in the Yukon. That one has not been declared yet. There's still a chance there could be an upset from the NDP there. In Selkirk-Interlake in Manitoba, all 200 polls reporting now. This is just come in now. Another Liberal cabinet minister goes down to defeat here by 51 votes, a very tight one. You can almost bet there'll be a recount ordered up in Selkirk-Interlake. But another Liberal cabinet minister in trouble. John Gerard was the Minister of Science and Research and Development, I believe. He adds his name to the list along with David Dingwall and Doug Young in Atlantic Canada, who lost their seats tonight. Overall, though, the numbers show the Liberals with their second majority government in a row. Jason Moskowitz, CBC's chief political correspondent, has been beside me all evening tonight. Jason, some of your final thoughts on what we've witnessed here this evening.
Well, in 1993, we analyzed the election and we said regional representation was greater in the parliament that had just been elected. And after tonight, one would have to extend that argument just a little further and say that regional representation is even greater now. You have the Liberals top-heavy in the province of Ontario with about 100 seats in that province. You have the Conservatives in Atlantic Canada, the Bloc Québécois holding most of the seats in French Quebec, the Reform Party in Western Canada. This is a very regionally based parliament. Preston Manning just said in his speech that it will be a challenge to make this parliament work. Yes, it will be a challenge and it will be most interesting. Jean Chrétien said in his speech that the Liberal Party has representatives from all regions of the country. Yes, but no representatives from the province of Nova Scotia, and in Saskatchewan just one, and in Alberta very few, and the Liberals are not that strong from sea to sea to sea in terms of MPs across the country.
What do you think the Parliament's going to play out? Like, as you said, you've been watching question periods and parliamentary debates for perhaps longer than you care to tell us tonight. But when you think about what this one's going to be like and how, especially the cut and thrust of question period now with 5 official parties there, all with a certain chunk of time, how do you think it will play out here?
Well, I think that they're going to have to do something about the time period for question period, because traditionally it's been 45 minutes, and that's basically been for 3 recognized political parties. Add 2 more, and I don't think you can do it in 45 minutes. And I guess that's the first thing we'll have to ask whoever is the next speaker. And you'd have to wonder if the Liberals want a Liberal to be the next speaker, because with the majority they have, you know, if somebody's sick or if somebody goes away or if somebody quits, the Liberals really want a Liberal speaker. That's something else they'll have to address. And maybe, just maybe, John Nunziata would be a good speaker.
Yeah, right. Well, you may be the only one who's nominating John Nunziata, but you never know, right? Okay, listen, Jason, stay where you are. I'm going to head down the Hall of Honor here to the people who did the real legwork here tonight as the results poured in, especially in the early hours of our broadcast. And that's our front bench of political journalists who were watching the parties one by one. Your final thoughts, starting with Don Newman, who has been watching the Liberals all evening. Don?
Well, Peter, it was Vince Lombardi who said winning isn't everything, it's the only thing, and the Liberals got the only thing. They got the win, but it sure was ugly, and it's going to call into question the judgment of the people who wanted to have the election early, starting with the Prime Minister. It's also going to call into judgment whether or not the campaign was properly organized, and it's going to call into question whether or not he should continue very long, since he's clearly not going to be leading the party into the next election. And the other issue, I suppose, is in terms of how Parliament's going to work, certainly the Liberals won't want a question period any longer, so it's going to be interesting.
You know, the Liberals, Don, you know this as well as anyone, have always been very private in affairs like that, calling into question certainly the operations of their leader and their leader's office, especially when they're in power. And as you say, they did win tonight. Do you think if there is a discussion like that, if there's a debate or even a fight about this, that the public's going to know about it?
No, certainly not directly. Remember, though, that Lester Pearson was convinced to leave, so it has happened before, and it, you know, in the relatively recent past. But no, I don't think anybody will come out with the knives right away, and I think that probably the money coming into the party will help determine whether or not the leader is going to continue on, and those kind of issues will probably drive it.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. Don Newman, who watched the Liberals tonight. Reform ended up #2 on the evening. That was one of the big goals. But they did it with less votes, actually, than they did the last time. Nancy Wilson was watching Reform on the evening. And Nancy, your thoughts on all this?
Well, Peter, certainly becoming the official opposition, the party that is just 10 years old, which has been noted in Calgary, that, of course, is quite the accomplishment. So certainly Reform leader Preston Manning is now technically, his party is the government in waiting, and he now enjoys the task of putting together the so-called shadow cabinet, the front bench team. There'll be lots to choose from there. But remember, shut out in Ontario, shut out in Atlantic Canada. This is really sobering for Reform, particularly for Preston Manning, because he really staked so much personally on making inroads there. So yes, official opposition party status. Some of the post-mortem on the strategy probably will be why didn't tax cuts play stronger in Ontario, and what about that unity message, and was it possible that that message and the hard line was something that soured voters in Ontario to Reform? So there'll certainly be considerable postmortems, but right now certainly basking in the glow of official opposition.
All right, Nancy, thank you. Well, losing opposition status tonight was the Bloc Québécois, although they still wound up, as we see, with 44 seats. Wendy Mesley, what's the verdict on Bloc tonight?
Well, I found it really interesting what the leader, Gilles Duceppe, said in his speech this evening, that tonight shows that Quebecers believe strongly in a sovereign Quebec. Well, I'm not so sure about that. It's sure that they did hang on to most of their seats, but throughout this campaign, the Bloc told Quebecers that they should look at this race like a referendum campaign, that sovereignty was at stake. And so if you do that and you look at the share of the vote, which was 39%, they would have lost a referendum. So it'd be pretty hard. I mean, they didn't even get half of the French-speaking vote, which is the core sovereignist support. So it'd be pretty hard to argue that the Bloc lived up to its slogan of speaking for Quebec, and I'm sure that tomorrow Federalists will argue that although the support for sovereignty has been on the increase ever since Meech Lake, really, since the birth of the Bloc Québécois, that this is a setback.
All right, well, we leave three parties where questions are likely to be asked in the days ahead, and we head into one at least, the NDP, where I don't imagine there'll be many harsh questions for anybody. A big night for the NDP and for Alexa McDonough. Alison Smith was watching that unfold. Alison?
Peter, in fact, it was an historic night for the NDP. They made an historic breakthrough in Atlantic Canada, a strong showing across the rest of the country that exceeded the expectations of many. In fact, about a year ago, Alexa McDonough said she'd set her sights on 15 seats. Well, tonight, they've got 21 in their hands. She also said that she was in this for a marathon, not a sprint. Well, she's been pretty fast out of the blocks. And it's certainly enough of a showing that voice of Canada's conscience that McDonough talked about is certainly going to be heard in the House of Commons.
All right, Alison, thank you. Well, that leaves us with the Conservative Party, and really it depends where you are in the debate about the future of the Tories. The Tories finished #2 overall on the night in total votes cast in any party's direction. Only the Liberals had more votes than the Tories, but it's not votes that count on election night, it's seats. And in seats, the Tories ended up #5. What does it all mean? Neil MacDonald, who watched the Tories tonight.
Well, you said the upside, Peter. He came in second in popular vote, back with 10 times as many seats, and he's got party status, and that's good enough for him. But he remains the leader of the fifth party, and it must be said that if the Reformers are a regional party, you could just as easily say the same thing about the Tories. By far the majority of Charest's MPs are from Atlantic Canada, a group of red Tories, and it's a pretty safe bet they'll soon be waving bye-bye to all that right-wing policy stuff imported from Mike Harris's Ontario Conservatives. Anyway, don't forget this. There will presumably be another referendum in this country. Jean Charest will be might not be a major player in Parliament, but he'll sure be a major player in that referendum. He's got Quebec credentials in 5 seats, so that will probably be his next hill, and you heard him talk about it tonight.
All right, Neil MacDonald. Well, if you've been watching us all evening, then you've known every once in a while we've gone inside the Parliamentary Library, right at the end of the Hall of Honour here in the Parliament buildings. Incredible spot, the Parliamentary Library, the only place left standing after the Great Fire of 1916. Well, left standing in the Parliamentary Library tonight.
It's the very end of the Hall of Honour.
Yes.
I underscore that.
Who else but Rex Murphy? Rex, your final thoughts on the night.
Peter, it really is, it's a genuinely interesting night. The Liberals have won a victory, but it's a Pyrrhic victory, even if it is the first, second in a row majority government. It's a majority by a sliver. I think there was a strategic error in the Liberals. Mr. Chrétien, in his speech tonight, actually sounded some of the themes and actually hit some of the tone that maybe this election should have been about clearly from the very center. The open question of Canadian life is whether Canada continues, and separatism and the dynamics of separatism have got to be faced head on. This campaign didn't have a center, and because of that, I think what the election result has done, it's consolidated the differences. You've got Reform out here, you've got the Liberals in Ontario, the Bloc in Quebec, and Atlantic Canada. Secondly, from this election, we're definitely going to have a different parliament. It's not just because the opposition leader's seat has shifted. It's because Manning and the Reform are bringing a different tone to this whole business. They are determined to force the question. You saw when you saw Mr. Duceppe that he already knows that now the Bloc has an advantage in that they're consolidated too. They know that this time around the question is not going to be soft-pedaled. So this is increasing the fractionalization. It's increasing the temperature, so the question is going to get pushed. I don't know what it's going to be like in this Parliament. I don't think it's going to be as civil. I don't think that they're going to be able to avoid the questions and pretend they don't exist. So in that way, it may be a very, very useful exercise. We've become accustomed to believing that elections settle questions. This election left a hell of a lot of them wide open.
All right. Rex Murphy in the Parliamentary Library tonight. We, of course, in the Hall of Honor, which leads up to the Parliamentary Library. And the last spot before you get into the library is where Hannah Gartner is tonight. And we're going to hear from Hannah now and her panel of political pundits, their thoughts on what we witnessed on this historic evening. Hannah.
Peter, thank you very much. Why don't we pick up on something Rex mentioned. As I listened to the leaders talk about the future, I wonder with slight Liberal majority, the Reform leaning on them and the Bloc leaning on them, how it's going to change the face of this country, if the country will be any less angry than it appeared to be the last few days of the election.
I think the country appears to be more complicated than ever, more complex, more heterogeneous. There are many distinct societies in Canada. I mean, it shows obviously from the results. One thing I would like to say about Quebec, it is true that 38% in favor of a sovereigntist party, that's not much in comparison to the 49.4% that voted yes in the referendum. But what you have to understand is that the people who voted yes in the last referendum, and he may vote yes in the next referendum, are not all the sovereigntists. You have about 20% of people for whom the first choice is the Federation. But if these people keep being told that the people of Quebec does not exist, and that there is no distinct society in Quebec, they will risk sovereignty.
And this is why I asked this. The last few days of that campaign, when Mr. Manning was saying no more politicians from Quebec, when Mr. Charest called him a bigot, when the sovereignists became indignant and angry, that polarizes more.
Well, again, I mean, some people said that was national unity. I said that was national disunity, and I think that's a big difference. I mean, it wasn't just a debate about the unity question. It was a debate about Quebec, and I mean, the Reform Party did pick up significant support on an anti-Quebec, not a unity message. I think it is fundamentally different now, in which you have a party in opposition, the House of Commons, who will argue that way, and I think that will help the Bloc. And I agree with the point that was made previously, that in no way should you look at the number of votes the Bloc got today and say that's the only votes they would get on the question of sovereignty. It makes it much more difficult to make any proposal to Quebec in Parliament. But again, I think overall the Parliament is reflective of the mood of the country today. You can argue with how we got there, but that it's reflective of that. There's a concern about the social issues, there's a concern about jobs, and there is a concern about whether or not the country stays together.
Haviva, Jean Chrétien said, as a matter of fact, it was Mr. Manning who said this is we're in a transitional stage. Do you see us being in that transitional stage as well?
Well, you could say that we are always in a transitional stage, and that's what life is about. I think that one of the core issues that was discussed in this election campaign was really about what people think equality is. And there was one group of people who said that equality means being exactly the same. Another group of people who said that if we are not exactly the same, we cannot live together. And the vast proportion of Canadians, through either the Liberal Party or the Conservative Party or the NDP, said that we can be different and live together nonetheless. And so I think that's in a way what the debate is going to be about different ideas of what equality is and whether we can find a way to make the kind of accommodations with each other, which have been the genius of Canada all these years.
It's also going to be...
accommodations change at different times.
But it will also be about economic issues as well. Will the Liberals be pushed a little bit more to the right than they would feel comfortable being?
I think it's the facts of the case that help to decide what the Liberal Party will do. And now that the fiscal situation is significantly better than what we inherited in 1993, there are many more options for us, which is one of the things we tried to say during the campaign.
But may I just, picking up on something both Haviva and Bob said, I think it's, and also Louis, I mean, it's important to remember that the vast majority of Canadians who voted in this election voted for a message of reconciliation, not one of division, not one of disunity, and that was certainly something that Monsieur Charest tried to emphasize in his campaign, was that even the majority of Francophones inside Quebec were basically looking for that extended hand on the part of other Canadians, and were extending a hand themselves. And I think that as difficult as this Parliament may be to manage, there's also lots of reasons to be hopeful. And one of them is the fact that there are some very, very real, truly national parties who, unlike some of the things that have been said tonight, do have representation, not simply in the Maritimes, which I guess Mr. Manning doesn't think counts as part of Canada, but in Ontario, in Quebec, in Manitoba. The NDP has representatives in many provinces as well, and that is a hopeful sign for all Canadians.
But again, I mean, again, we're getting caught in the same trap as the election. We all of a sudden think this is all about national unity.
No, it's not. It's about moving the country forward together.
A lot of people voted tonight because of their concern about jobs and health care and education. And the Prime Minister said now people have sacrificed, now it's time to pay back. The problem is a lot of people sacrificed the most and a lot of people didn't sacrifice at all. And a lot of people voted in this election not concerned about the Quebec issue or national unity, but concerned about the future of their children and their jobs and poverty questions. And those are the issues we've got to get on the table
I think everyone that voted in this election voted to move the country forward. It happens to be that many of us think that moving it forward together is as integral a part to our future success as anything else. But it is all about the future and whether or not this government had a plan for the next century. And I think, you know, the majority of Canadians would say it did not.
It's also about the connection between social programs, our economic policy, and the fundamental values of Canadians. I don't think you can make a distinction between them. I think that they are dependent on each other, and a vision for the future demands having both a vision for how to accommodate each other and how to make sure that there is greater fairness in the land, that our resources are better shared, and that we grow better.
And how will that happen with Mr. Manning being the leader of the opposition?
Well, I think what you've got tonight is a complex result based on the fact that we have a complex political culture divided conventionally on a left-right spectrum, but also divided on the national unity question. There'll be a lot of second-guessing of Manning's unity strategy, but I guess what I'll opt out of the consensus here, because I guess what I would say to him, to the Reform Party, is that there's two visions in the country. One that talks about two nations and distinct society, another that's talked about one Canada. It was John Diefenbaker who talked about it in one way. Pierre Trudeau talked about it in another way. Preston Manning has talked about it in another way, a devolved one Canada. But that is the only vision that's going to win out in the long term over the sovereignty vision. Everybody who puts it forward will be vilified by the separatists, by people who want separatist votes, but it must be done by somebody.
So what is that obvious that this one Canada does not exist tonight? I mean, there are many Canadas.
That's why we have a federation.
Let's not pretend.
And so what is it going to take, Stephen?
We're a big united country.
So what will it take?
We live in division, and that's healthy.
But Stephen, how can you talk about one Canada at the same time as the leader of the Reform Party talks about we've had too many leaders from Quebec? If it's one Canada, then Quebecers are as good as anybody else in the political system. So I'm sorry, the language is couched in terms of the spirit of appeal to people, such as equality. It doesn't really mean equality. It's not equal for people with disabilities. It's not equal for minorities. It's not equal for the poor. It's not equal for people who are in poverty. It's not equal. Those are languages that don't really mean equality, and it doesn't mean equality in terms of political rights either.
Well, I think just to pick up on Bob's point, the reality is, no, but Stephen, just hold for a minute, please. Stephen, just hold on.
The leader has to come from Quebec.
Doesn't have
That's
to.
been an underlying theme for 30 years.
Nor should they be excluded from coming from Quebec.
Preston Manning did not say that leaders can't come from Quebec. He said they can't come just from Quebec.
Well, they haven't
and I
just
think
come
there's
from
a
Quebec.
political establishment here that has to adjust itself to that
Well,
idea.
may I just say, you know, it's a legitimate part of the political discourse to have debates about distinct society, about changes to the Constitution, and any number of other things. It is not a legitimate part of the political discourse to pander to intolerance and to drive wedges between people on the basis of their ethnicity and where they come from in this country. And that's what we really have to. There are all kinds of solutions, positive solutions that can move this country forward, and I would really hope that Mr. Manning, having seen that that kind of rhetoric was rejected in Ontario, will leave it behind in the next Parliament.
And the only comprehensive constitutional agenda laid on the table in this election was by Preston Manning on his devolution of powers to the provinces.
Well, I
agree with
that's
the
a matter of
fact. I
opinion.
agree with the fact he wasn't able to communicate it effectively because he doesn't speak French and because certain politicians use that to inflame the separatist passions.
Would you
of
agree,
Quebec.
Stephen, that the Reform Party perhaps hit a bit of a wall, that in order to go beyond that core vote to become a truly national party, they're going to have another leader take them there?
Every party has hit a bit of a wall tonight. It's clear that none of the opposition parties have the base necessary to form a national government. But what's also clear is the Liberal Party is gradually turning from a national party into simply a regional government based in Ontario. 2/3 of its seats are from Ontario. Any political party that wants to unify the country and govern into the next century is going to have a base that encompasses more than just one of the bases we see on the screen tonight.
Haviva, you're shaking your head.
Well, I think that that you're playing funny games with arithmetic. It seems to me that the Liberal Party has representation from every region of Canada. The Progressive Conservative Party doesn't, and the NDP doesn't, but the NDP has more than it ever had.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the country, the vision of the country, and how it's going to change the face of it and how it affects Canadians, not your individual parties.
The Liberal Party has only 38% of the national vote tonight. That's got to be the lowest vote for any majority government in the history of this country. And without the province of Ontario, it wouldn't even be the official opposition.
When you have 5 political parties, and each one of them gets around 10% of the vote as its base, that's what the mathematics will do. So
That's
I think
why the Liberals the government.
all you're rediscovering are the fundamental laws of arithmetic.
But again, Stephen, let's also, if you want to talk about reform, no seats in Ontario.
None.
Atlantic Canada, a washout. None in Quebec. I think one in Manitoba. So, I mean, the reality is, sure, opposition leader, fair enough. I think if I was Preston Manning, I would think that was a major accomplishment. But the facts are he knew very well that this was part of moving Ontario. One of the reasons he didn't move Ontario is I think that people saw the reform agenda in Mike Harris as well. That's right. And they rejected that in
These
favor
are
of the
deficiencies, but every other party here would rather be second than third, fourth, or fifth.
Well, I think that's right. There's no argument about that, but I'm talking about objectives. I mean, I'm talking about objectives.
No, I agree. I agree.
Folks, this truly has been an interesting evening, and I thank you all. Haviva Hosek.
A long one.
A long one. Bob
yes.
White.
We're all still
Stephen
awake,
Harper.
Finally.
Louis
That's the
Balthazar.
good news.
Thank you.
Nancy Jameson. I thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Peter, thank you.
And thank you, Hannah. Well, the election story is the big story, obviously, tonight, and we will be returning to it in a few moments. But while we've been focusing on the results and what they mean for Canadians for many hours now, we do have other news to tell you about. And we begin with a major story in the United States tonight, verdicts in the case of the worst mass murder ever on U.S. soil, the Oklahoma City bombing. Here's David Holton on the judgment against Timothy McVeigh.
The federal courtroom in Denver was tense with emotion as the judge read the verdict, many in the audience weeping, one woman on her knees praying. But from Timothy McVeigh, there wasn't a hint of emotion as one by one he was pronounced guilty on all 11 counts of murder and conspiracy.
Guilty.
In Oklahoma City, there were cheers of joy and tears of relief as survivors and relatives of victims gathered at the bomb site to hear the verdicts from Denver.
Guilty. Timothy McVeigh being found guilty on all 11 counts from the Denver court.
I wanted to jump up and say yes.
Let it out now.
Yes.
It helps some, but that's only temporary. My little kid's not coming back.
I don't even know if this community will ever get over it, but personally it helps somewhat of a closure. It starts more of a closure for me.
About a third of the building has been blown away.
The verdict came just over 2 years after the bombing of the federal building in Oklahoma City that killed 168 people and injured 500 others. Americans were shocked by the worst act of terrorism in the U.S. and shocked again that the prime suspect was one of their own, a decorated Gulf War veteran.
We got him!
As they emerged from the courthouse, relatives of victims were all relieved and satisfied with the verdict. There were cheers for lead prosecutor Joseph Hartzler.
We've always had confidence in our evidence. Now everyone else will have confidence in the evidence in the verdict. We're ready to move on to the next stage.
We have visited with Mr. McVeigh. We will be working with him tonight and tomorrow for the preparation of the second stage.
That stage begins on Wednesday, when the same jury reconvenes to decide whether McVeigh should get the death penalty or life in prison without parole. In Oklahoma City, there's little doubt about what the punishment should be.
I think the evidence showed that he was guilty of being a mass murderer, and I think the death penalty is in order.
I would personally like to see them amputate his leg with no anesthesia, as they did Dana on that day, and then set him over a bunch of bamboo shoots and let him grow up into him until he's dead.
Here in Washington, President Clinton praised the work of prosecutors and the FBI in getting McVeigh convicted. And many legal analysts praised Judge Richard Maich for conducting a fair but fast-moving trial that they said will do much to restore faith in the U.S. justice system. David Halton, CBC News, Washington.
This was the day after the vote in France, the first day on the job for new Prime Minister Lionel Jospin. He led the Socialists to a remarkable comeback in parliamentary elections. As Paul Workman reports, that will make life difficult for President Jacques Chirac.
In France, they call it cohabitation. And for Lionel Jospin, it began with a trip to the presidential palace. The President of the Republic offered to appoint me, said Jospin. I accepted. It means that France now enters a state of unavoidable political hostility. A socialist prime minister sharing power with a Gaullist president whose decision to call early elections turned out to be a colossal political blunder.
I think Chirac was punished, basically, because he misperceived the weight of French despair, of French unhappiness. And he underestimated grossly the opposition.
I think the government paid for all of its mistakes, its cynicism, and its arrogance, says this woman. French newspapers made much of Chirac's humiliation, tried to analyze what the results mean. It's a new chance, said one headline. Jospin's great revenge, said another.
I just hope that we'll find some new goals for the future for our country. I think the people need it. Some new dreams for our country.
The socialists made a remarkable comeback. Nevertheless, it's their allies, the communists, who now hold the balance of power. And that only adds to the confusion in Europe. Essentially, the French have said no to American-style economic reform, refused to make a sacrifice for Europe. How does all of this now threaten the grand plans for a single currency?
The French want change, but change without cost and without risk. They want the euro, but they want jobs above the euro.
President Chirac has paid severely for his misjudgment. His leadership has been weakened, his credibility and his competence called into question. He gave up nearly absolute power to call the elections early and ended up sharing it. Paul Workman, CBC News, Paris.
Fierce fighting in the African nation of Sierra Leone has eased tonight. Earlier, about 50 people were killed as troops from Nigeria tried to overturn an 8-day-old military coup. Nigeria is the chief power in the region, and its gunships bombarded the capital, Freetown, in an effort to restore the country's president. Just off the coast, the exodus of foreigners continued. U.S. troops have now helped hundreds of people flee the chaos, including dozens of orphans. Here at home, nearly 5,000 Inco workers are on strike tonight in Sudbury, Ontario. Picket lines went up a short time ago after workers rejected a tentative contract. It's the first strike at the nickel giant in 15 years. The main issues, wages and pensions. Well, Donovan Bailey has apologized for his remarks right after yesterday's so-called fastest man in the world race. Bailey called Michael Johnson a chicken and said Johnson only stopped racing because he knew he was going to lose, not because he was hurt. In a statement today, Bailey said he was sorry, adding that he has tremendous respect for Johnson's abilities and that he hopes his leg injury is not serious. Well, a sad story to tell you about tonight. Rose Cherry has died. Some of you may recognize the name, many more will recognize the face. Rose Cherry was the wife of popular Hockey Night in Canada commentator Don Cherry. She was born and raised in Pennsylvania, but her ties to Canada go back decades. The couple had been married for 40 years. Rose Cherry died of cancer in a Toronto hospital on Sunday night. She was 62 years old. A private funeral is planned for Wednesday. Now, wrapping up the story we've been watching tonight throughout the night, the election's wild ride for the Liberals. They were ambushed in Atlantic Canada, but the tide started to turn in Quebec and rolled over Ontario. Jean Chrétien has held on to his majority, but just barely. There you see the numbers, 154 elected, one still leading for a total of 155, needed 151 for a majority. The Reform Party, official opposition at 60 seats. Chrétien will be facing a new official opposition, and that's Reform. Susan Bonner now on how the votes stacked up from coast to coast.
You took this campaign right over the top, right into the history books.
In Atlantic Canada, where Liberals went into the election with 31 of 32 seats, a protest vote pummeled the party, with powerful ministers losing their seats. Health Minister David Dingwall and Defence Minister Doug Young.
J'ai pas l'intention de chômer.
Before the polls had even closed in central Canada, the Conservatives had won back their official party status. Newly elected Conservative Peter MacKay, son of former Tory Cabinet Minister Elmer MacKay, summed up the early mood.
They're sending a message to them now. They're upset about the high unemployment. They're upset about high taxes and the way the government has chosen to spend the money. So we're seeing the outpour of support for the Conservative Party.
The Liberals will form the next government.
In vote-rich central Canada, the scenario changed. Ontario remained Liberal country, and the party's majority was saved by winning almost every one of the 103 seats. In Quebec, the Bloc Québécois shrugged off a difficult campaign and won the majority of seats in the province. While the party met its goal of winning more seats than the Federalist, Liberal and Conservatives combined, it won fewer seats than in 1993, and its popular vote dropped to just below 40%.
This campaign will have proved once again that reconciliation of the aspirations of Quebec and those of the rest of Canada.
The Bloc will no longer be Canada's official opposition. That goes to Reform. As expected, Reform did well in Western Canada, coming close to a sweep in Alberta and maintaining strength in British Columbia.
With the election of this Parliament, I believe Canada has entered into a season of transition, a period in which old ideas and old forces are dying, but it is a period in which new ideas and new forces are being born.
It was also a mixed win for Jean Charest. Picking up seats in the East and Quebec, Tories too were shut out of Ontario and didn't do as well nationally as the NDP.
The last 3.5 years have been for the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada a long and sometimes difficult journey.
The Prime Minister came close to losing his riding and his majority government. But he took comfort in the fact that it's only the second time in 44 years that Liberals have won back-to-back majority governments.
I pledge to govern for the whole country, in interest of all Canadians, not just those who voted for my party.
And the Prime Minister called on all parties to put aside their regional differences and work together for the good of Canada. With a slim majority government and a strong separatist bloc in Parliament, that is quite a tall order. Susan Bonner, CBC News.
And an opportunity now to update you on one of the stories we were telling you throughout the evening, and especially just in the last half hour or so, the share of vote nationwide. This is the breakdown on that. The Liberals 38.5%. The Reform has now inched ahead of the Tories by about 3,000 votes, as you can tell there. The voting still going on in BC, the counting of the ballots. So their Reform is at 19.1% of the vote. So are the Tories, but there's about 3,000 votes separating them. So that's for the race for second place overall in terms of total vote cast in the country. Reform's vote, though, still down compared with last year, the last election, 1993. They're down by about a half a percentage point. So overall, Reform down in vote tonight, but still now passing the Tories for second place in that category. But of course, the category that's important is seats, and in that, Reform clearly ahead of the Tories and the Bloc Québécois and the NDP. Only the Liberals surpass the Reform in total seats tonight, and Reform is the official opposition. Well, Jason Moskowitz, the CBC's chief political correspondent, joins me once again for one final time here. With your thoughts, I guess we should start with the Liberals. And, you know, it was 5 weeks ago today, or 5 weeks ago yesterday, actually, to be exact, that they pulled the plug, called the election, went early after 3.5 years.
And the Liberals thought that by going early they would do what they thought they would do. It would be a much bigger majority than this, clearly. And the Liberals, let's face it, a majority is a majority, a victory is a victory, and let's say that. Having said that, the Liberals did not do nearly as well as they thought they would do. And also, if you go back to the beginning of the campaign when the Prime Minister had so much difficulty answering the question he knew he would be asked, why did you call the election after 3.5 years? It seemed the campaign from that moment on began on somewhat of a negative. Now, why did the Liberals go early? The answer you get from most Liberals is that they thought it would never be better than it was this spring. And it seemed that that too was a negative, thinking that it wouldn't get better, only worse. And the Liberals thought now was the time to go, again, a bit of a negative to begin a campaign on.
Now, the Reform Party, this was an interesting campaign because there was a lot of bitterness expressed, especially near the end, with the different parties who were fighting it out for second. You remember a couple of weeks ago out of the debate, the Tories had the big bounce and they were having dreams of perhaps finishing second place overall, but the last few weeks of the campaign certainly changed that, and the tone of the campaign reached a depth we've never seen before, and a lot of bitter words spoken, and one has to wonder how that's going to play out in the weeks, months, and years ahead.
Well, as people said during the campaign, words like bigot and bigotry are words that no one ever heard in a Canadian election campaign before, and I think that all Canadians know that you can't use words like that without repercussions. Preston Manning and Jean Charest, they have difficulties between them. They've always had difficulties between them. There are great rivalries between the Conservative Party and the Reform Party. Those rivalries are probably increased as a result of tonight, because with the popular vote between them, they're both at basically 19%. Some will argue that nothing's been settled, and the battle continues with the words bigot and bigotry having already been used.
Okay, final thought, this one on the Bloc Québécois. Going to hopscotch over the NDP. We've certainly given them credit for a great performance tonight. No questions being raised in that party tonight after the performance of Alexa McDonough. But in the Bloc, Wendy raised it. What does this all mean in terms of their performance tonight, the percentage of their vote in Quebec for the sovereignty movement?
Well, some people will say it's a miracle that the Bloc Québécois did as well as it did, considering the dismal campaign that it had. And also, the Bloc Québécois lost official opposition status, correct. But do the sovereignists want the Bloc Québécois to be the official opposition, or do the sovereignists want the Reform Party to be the official opposition? And there are many Quebecers who are arguing that having the Reform Party as the official opposition, in fact, will help the sovereignty movement a lot more than having the Bloc Québécois as the official opposition.
All right, Jason. Well, as always, it's a pleasure for me to sit beside you on any big night. The last time we did this was the referendum, and it was great having your counsel and your thoughts throughout this evening, as it was for all of us here in the Hall of Honor in the center block of the Parliament buildings. A great location for us to work in tonight and to report the results to you. And for all of us, those of us who have appeared on air tonight, it's been a treat just to be able to work in this location and report on the results that you Canadians did today in your different ballot boxes across this country. But I want to end our programming tonight by getting up one final time from the desk and walking down here through the Hall of Honor, giving the big wave to all our colleagues at the front bench and down at the panel, and walk instead here into the Railway Committee Room, one of the most famous committee rooms here in the Parliament buildings, which tonight, for us, has been the location of our control room. And these are the people who really make things work on election night. If we did a good job out there in front of the cameras, we did it because of all the people behind the cameras. And you're seeing them in here in our control room, and I want to personally thank them on behalf of all of those of us who worked in front of the cameras, because what we did tonight was the easy work. The hard work was involved in the broadcasting tonight and the whole setup, the location inside the House of Commons. I want to name them all, but obviously we don't have that much time. You can see them all here. We also want to thank the staff of the House of Commons here in Ottawa, who have been terrific for us over the past few weeks. It has taken quite a while to set up this location, and they've been wonderful to us, allowing us free access all around these buildings over the last couple of weeks, allowing us to take our cameras inside places never filmed before for television. And we've done that so we could show you what it's like. Well, for all of us at CBC Television News, I'm Peter Mansbridge in Ottawa.